This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, and welcome to andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. As you can see, we have been very lucky this morning and found some buffalo. We would like to welcome you to your very own digital safari, live from the African wild. So we have been very lucky this morning to come straight across a herd of buffalo, very close to our route out of the lodge. What's quite interesting is that they weren't here last night when we drove past here, and certainly that's where they've spent the evening. You know, you can see how they're all still lying down. Buffalo will often spend the night out in an open area, spend the evening lying down, and then wake up just as they're starting to do now, start feeding again. So they must have walked in the dark to get here, which is quite interesting behavior. So, my name is Kim, and behind the camera we have Glenn, and we are going to be with you this morning. Now, please remember that if you're under 18, you can please send your questions to us at kidsquestions@wildearth.tv, and also you can register on our WildEarth website and go to our live safari page and submit any questions that you have there. This is actually a beautifully massive herd, and it's nice to see a big herd like this around this time of the year. You know, normally when you start getting your rains, you'll start getting smaller herds because family units will stay together and they travel together to find food and water, but different family units can combine and form larger herds, and they do this when, you know, the water's a bit more scarce and the food's a bit more scarce, and I think that's exactly what they've done. The rains are a bit late in the season. Water's still very, very scarce in the area, so they're actually struggling to find enough water, meaning they have to walk long distances, and so the longer the distance, the safer they feel with more and more numbers. I think what we might do is we might spend a few minutes here, and we're going to send you over to Eric, who's found a beautiful spot this morning.
Good morning, everybody. We have been greeted by such a beautiful sunrise today. And that sun looks like it's moving quite quickly up and hopefully going to be burning off of these clouds this morning. So we are looking over the Timbavati River. My name is Eric, and behind the camera is Seb. And like I said, we are down, well, we've actually just come up from the riverbed, and we saw fresh tracks and scat of a lioness who had dropped her down literally on top of our vehicle tracks from yesterday afternoon. And so this lioness is still in the area. Last night I was saying that we hadn't seen any fresh tracks or signs, and so it looks like she's returned back into this area, and she's walked across the riverbed, and the last tracks we had of her were heading in this direction. And so Seb and I have just been taking a moment to check all of these big thickets along this area to see if we have any sign of her further and work out where she might be keeping her cubs. No luck yet. I think it's quite a hard task to be searching around and looking for her, especially because she's going to be keeping them hidden most of the time, but you never know. We could always get lucky. But what a fantastic way to start. I mean, this sun is really beautiful this morning, and it's really cool to see how some of the clouds are moving quite quickly across the sun, especially the smaller ones just below the sun over there. I always find it fascinating, especially when we're watching the sun like this, how quickly it will rise. And just a moment ago, before, or just as we went live actually, that sun was completely below the clouds. So now look at it, it's almost disappeared. And we might wait for it to completely disappear behind the clouds before we decide to move on. And there it goes. Nice and quick. So I think we might continue on, and we'll slowly check this road to see if we can see any tracks or signs of this lioness. And see here, we're looking on a road that's got quite a lot of grass growing over the tracks. So we'll have to be extra careful, because the sand is relatively easy to see the tracks, but as soon as this grass starts growing over it, it will hide the tracks quite nicely. And so we'll need to just check it really, really nice and slowly and see if she maybe decided to come up in this direction. And so I wonder where she went off to last night. I mean, she must have left this area to go off and hunt. And if we're lucky, we might get to find the remains of a carcass that she caught, perhaps. It'd be nice to know that she's got a nice full belly for her cubs.
Well, Eric, I hope that you do find your lions, and I hope that they are on a meal. It always makes for exhilarating viewing. Now, we are, well, just heading south slowly, which I'll get into the reason why now. But before I do, my name is Tristan. On camera, I've got Import this morning, and it is not a warm welcome, but a warm, friendly welcome from us here at Djuma. We had a quite quiet night from a rain perspective, which is a good thing. It means it's fairly dry this morning, but it seems as though lots and lots was going on. While we were doing our fireside chat last night for the explorers, we had a leopard sawing, so there's a track for a leopard, there's lots of hyena activity, and then there's tracks for a whole pride of lions on quarantine as well. And so what's happening at the moment is Steve is on the actual tracks for the lions kind of coming southwards, and I'm just helping him by doing a much bigger loop to try and cut down his time. So I've come right down to the southern side in the direction that they're traveling to try and see if maybe, just maybe, they're already down this way, or if they're still up that side. It just helps with kind of figuring out where you want to go, and also reducing the time that it's going to take to track down these lions. I suspect that it might be the Talamati Pride, given where I had them yesterday. It wasn't exactly far from Djuma. It was right near the gate, so from there to quarantine is a pretty quick walk, pretty brisk one. And so hopefully we'll kind of pick them up somewhere on Djuma itself. There's something in the road in front. There it is. What is it? Oh, it's a hyena walking towards us. It's just coming down the road in our direction. I can't see which hyena it is at the moment. I just saw ears over and above the grass. But it's now kind of stood itself up and is much more prominent as it comes along the road. Looks like one of the younger ones from here. I must profess my knowledge of the hyenas from long distance in terms of identifying them is always a lot trickier. It always takes me a while, and then I've got to actually go through all their profiles, and there's the odd one that is easy enough, but especially this younger lot. I've spent so little time with the younger members of the Djuma clan, as well as a lot of the males, that it sometimes makes it a little bit more tricky without actually having a proper look at them. But typical hyena at this time of the day, nose fairly close to the ground, and that's to try and figure out if they can find some semblance of food. So they're sniffing around looking for any indication of another predator. Although you have a fat little tummy, where have you come from with such a big tummy? Bit of blood on the face as well. I wonder where they have come from, because that tummy has got a nice little bulge on it, and like I said, there's a bit of blood on the face. So maybe they've stolen a kill from a leopard. Maybe they've managed to hunt for themselves. Unfortunately, we obviously can't off-road, and where this hyena is going to go now, it's going to go off the road and into a thicket. So we're not going to be able to follow it. But I'm intrigued into why it's it's walking with purpose, isn't it? It's as though it knows where it's going. All right. Well, we'll listen out. Maybe if they do find something, we'll be able to hear it. In the meantime, though, let's send you across to Tswalu Kalahari. It sounds like Maurits has got something pretty near the edge of the water.
Good morning, good morning. It is a stunning morning. Every morning that you can start like this is a stunning morning here at Tswalu Kalahari. Guys, we were on our way to the meerkats, and we actually bumped, our meerkat habituator, Veronique, actually found these two boys at the waterhole. They look very hungry. By the way, guys, good morning. My name is Maurits. Behind the camera, we've got Craig and Josh. So we found these, we were told about these guys at the waterhole, came to have a look quickly, and they look really hungry. Like I told you yesterday, we were actually fortunate enough to go past where their tracks were, and it seemed like they had a kill, but we think it was stolen by the hyenas. So it would seem like they are looking to hunt this morning as well. We'll just have a look at how the activity goes. But our plans might change. You know, sometimes in the bush, you don't always plan for these types of things happening, but it is a very welcome surprise. So I know we said we're going to go for the meerkats this morning, but if they really look like they want to hunt, then we might actually stick with them just for a little bit, see if there's not any action happening, and maybe go for the meerkats either later on this morning or tomorrow morning. But to see them go for maybe a springbok or something like that would be absolutely stunning. So yeah, for these two males, they absolutely have this waterhole in the heart of their territory. So you'll find them quite often around this dam. And this is also one of the waterholes where a lot of the females frequently drink with their cubs and so on. So it makes a lot of sense to spend a lot of time around here in case there's a mating opportunity presenting itself or something like that. But yeah, it would be great to see them hunting this morning. And you can see that belly is still not full, eh? So they are going to be hungry. I do think they fed a little bit yesterday morning or the day before yesterday's evening. But it wasn't a crazy amount. I think let's quickly go around the waterhole just to see if we can see where they're going. But yeah, what a way to start the morning, eh? It's nice and warm this morning. It's not at all the same temperature as we had yesterday morning. Yesterday we were freezing early in the morning, and then the sun came out and it helped a little bit. But this morning it's a beautiful, beautiful temperature. And well, I suppose the cheetahs agree. They're out and about and doing their thing. So let's have a look what they are up to. I'm pretty sure the direction the wind is blowing, and I'm pretty sure they're going to move down in this way towards the... Viola, you're absolutely right. I'm also very happy to see the cheetahs. Oh, they're actually chilling on the dam wall. We'll just go around, get a better view on them. There we go. So yeah, guys, the direction which they're looking in right now is where the wind is coming from. This is the same waterhole that we had them 2 days ago, or close to. And that clearing that I spoke about, where they were going to most likely head to, that's where the wind is coming from again. So that might be a good spot for them to look to hunt in. However, they know the bush a little bit better than I do, so we'll have to see where they are going to head. So yeah, guys, for the meantime, while they devise a plan, we're going to stick with them for a little bit. If there's something interesting that happens, we'll let you know, okay?
Do you dream of traveling to a far-flung wilderness location where life continues as normal? A place where you can escape to nature and breathe. If you become a WildEarth explorer, then this could soon become a reality. Subscribe today and stand a chance to win regular travel prizes. WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature. For the month of January 2021, we are offering a chance to win a unique WildEarth expedition to the magnificent Tswalu Kalahari. From the ancient quartzites Koranenberg Mountains to the southern Kalahari's red sand dunes, Tswalu offers what travelers crave most: space and time. The winner will explore this landscape in a vehicle, on foot, or on horseback, with a chance to go behind the scenes with WildEarth and of course meet the meerkats. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend at the luxury Motse Lodge, including flights from either Johannesburg or Cape Town. Open to all WildEarth explorers who have signed up before the end of January 2021. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, Mama. Just checking us out, everybody. There's no aggression here. Very relaxed. A herd of elephants moving around your car like that is truly, truly magical.
Tune into WildEarth every single day. It's in your nature.
Good morning everybody, welcome to Djuma as well around the corner from Sister B. Trucks this morning of quarantine. It looks like a pride of mine, so we're following up. Just it's working. Tristan is giving me some assistance. Good morning everybody. Now here we've got wonderful tracks of lions in the mud. Very, very nice to see. This is a female lioness. Front foot, back foot, whole pride. There's at least one male, and there's more than 3 individuals. I don't know exactly how many. They've kind of been scattering a bit, but they've been steadily heading south, and we're very blessed at some points to see where they've stepped in the mud, because most of the other places on the ground, very, very hard. Hello everybody, by the way, my name is Steve, joined by Jello on camera, and today, after we've tried to track down these lions, we're going to be looking at some medicinal plants this morning, if that's right with all of you. I've always done in the past a Medicinal Monday on a Monday, and today, those of you who weren't aware, it's Monday, so happy Monday to you. Jump on board with us. We're going to go see where these lions have gone, the direction they're heading, Tristan's giving me a hand to try to cut them off down there. They've either gone straight south or they've gone further forward. Who knows? These lions are definitely on the move. We found some sections where they were playing. You can see the claws were sticking out and nice big tracks. So who Djuma Private? At the moment he's got
Well, if anyone will find those lions, it will be Steve. He's pretty good on lion tracks, most of the time. We know sometimes they find him, with his little kind of incidents that he's had where he's walked into them and not noticed them. But he'll, I'm sure, pick them up at some point. Anyway, we're still with our Ellie bull. This is an Ellie that I recognize. He's got a very distinct tear on the bottom right of his ear. I think we saw him yesterday, maybe the day before, I can't remember now. But he's been around, and he did exactly what I was hoping he would do, which was shake the tree. Unfortunately, it was just a kind of just before you guys got to us. It's a short little thing that they do. They kind of walk up with their head and basically just headbutt it once, and that causes all these marula fruits just to sort of drop down to the ground. And as they drop down to the ground, he then can walk around and kind of pick them all up and feed off the nutritious fruit that there is. It's amazing to watch this time of the year how many elephants come into this area just because of one singular food source. They all know that this marula fruit doesn't last very long, but that it is hugely nutritious for them, and they are quite aware that that food is very easy to get. It doesn't require huge amounts of energy to find or consume, and the reward that they get is a very nutritious meal that's packed full of fructose and vitamin C, so good for their systems, and is tasty. And they just literally walk around all day long jamming these marula fruits into their mouth. Now, lots of you that are maybe newer to WildEarth will have probably heard of marulas in an alcoholic beverage, and will think that elephants can get drunk off them. It's not the case. A lot of those videos that have done the rounds of elephants looking like they're drunk is completely fabricated. It's normally elephants that have been darted and are under the effects of chemicals in terms of about to go to sleep or just waking up from it. Marulas don't have that ability to make an elephant get drunk. They just would have to stay in their system for way too long, and way too many of them to have an effect on the bloodstream. Now, Ramon, you say it's a gorgeous elephant. He is pretty, isn't he? That's the nice thing about this time of year. It's one of my favorite kind of parts of it, is that we get all of these magnificent bulls that start to come through. So you get these kind of younger bulls, and then it starts to go up into these really nice big old bulls. Sometimes we even get lucky and we have one of the emerging tuskers that comes through. I forget his name now, but he arrives. He's got these beautiful big tusks that kind of come forward. So it's always a really nice time of the year. Unfortunately, if you're a female elephant in a herd, not so much, because all of these bulls around means that they get a little bit amped up and they pick up the scent of the females and harass them pretty much all the time. So I don't think they'll be that happy. But for us, it's really spectacular to see all of these bulls. And I'm hoping that this year Daryl will come and visit. Daryl is a male elephant that we see regularly. He didn't come last year, which is the first time since I've been in this area that he hasn't arrived, which I hope doesn't mean something bad has happened to him. But it would be really cool if he does. He's got this little bell-shaped hole in his ear. It's very, very distinctive, and he has a lot of attitude to match his size. He's not afraid to kind of make sure that everybody knows he is the dominant big individual around. So we're hoping that he'll make a return. He always gets up to something and is full of all kinds of shenanigans, particularly around the camps, where he tries to get into the gardens and does all kinds of funny things to be able to find the food he needs. All right. Well, we'll probably carry on and see what else there is. Maybe just go and give Steve a hand. And while we do that, let's send you to Morris, who's still with his cheetahs, and sounds like they're starting to settle down.
Okay guys, so they've moved away from the waterhole now. You can see they're paying very much attention to what is going on around them. There's a gemsbok or an oryx that's actually spotted them, so he's busy alarm calling for them, unfortunately. But we almost thought we were going to have some quick action. There was a group of springbok that came running down towards the water, and these cheetahs just froze. The springbok ran past them, not too close to them though, maybe about 100 meters away. But I think they've decided against going for them, just because they were not stopping those springbok. They were playing, so it wasn't like they were running away from something or so. But I think they've decided to just lie down just off of the waterhole and see what comes into the water, to see if there's not something that they can go for. Getting a bit more lazy now. They might have had a busy early morning, but that doesn't mean that when there's something that comes in, they are not going to go for it. Like we've mentioned previously, they don't often go for the things like the springbok and so on. They go for larger prey items like female kudus and those types of things. Now, this is the perfect time of the day for the kudus to come into the water. They like to have a drink before they go out for their early morning activity, or before they go back up into the mountains, and we are quite close to the mountains, so it could be that there's a group of kudu coming past, or maybe a young gemsbok or something like that, which will be more up their alley to take down. So these cheetahs are 9 years old now, both of them. They are brothers from the same litter. So yeah, they've been dominant in this area almost 3 to 4 years at the moment. So very much doing actually pretty well. For a cheetah, they typically don't live as long as, let's say, something like a leopard. Life expectancy is anything between 12 and 14, sometimes the really lucky ones up to 16 years. But they are very much in their prime at the moment. And you can see that as well when it comes to where there's other males moving into the territory and so on. They dispatch of them with relative ease. I do think there's going to have to be a coalition of more than two that moves in before they're going to get kicked out. So, doing very well. And, all the ladies love them. Unfortunately, with the cheetahs, it's not always a nice scene or an easy process when it comes to mating. The males do harass the female quite a bit when she's ready for that. But even though that is the case, the females won't mind having these boys' genes be passed on to their cubs. Very good genes to have at the moment. Yeah, guys, as you can see, they're all getting a bit more lazy, which makes me think that we might actually will go for the meerkats. There's another vehicle coming now to have a look at them as well. So with that being the case, they can keep an eye on the cheetahs for us, see if they start getting into the hunting mood, and then we might actually not be too far away and come back to see if there is any activity. Or we might do the meerkats, and when they get mobile and start moving away, we'll come back and have a look at what these guys are up to. So yeah, I think what we're going to do is we're going to move on, head towards the meerkats, and then Kyle, you guys all know Kyle. He's gonna pull in soon and have a look at these cheetahs and let us know if there's anything that happens. So for the meantime, we're going to send you over to Tristan with his elephants, okay?
Well, as you can see, we're still with our Ellie, and that's purely because he was basically standing across the entire road until right now, where he's now so kindly just kind of moved off a little bit. But he has decided he was going to have a nice little feed and block the road, and so we just had to wait it out, really. And he's not exactly in a hurry, as you can see by the way he's feeding. It's walk one step, pick out something and eat, and walk one step and eat. And so it's not a rush this morning. The weather is good for elephants. It's nice and cool, and so there is no need whatsoever for him to be moving too fast this morning. And he'll basically just go from marula to marula tree and feed on everything that's in between. There'll be a lot of little forbs and trees and grasses that are growing at this time of the year that are very tasty and nutritious, and that's what he'll be targeting. He can be very selective at this time of the year. And what's very interesting with these guys of late, and I don't know the reason for it or why it's happening, but we're seeing elephants targeting marula trees for their bark at the moment, which is super weird. In the time that I've been in the Sabi Sands, which is, I mean, a fair chunk of time, normally they target things like knob thorns. That's their sort of primary go-to tree to eat when it comes to debarking. But of late, there's marulas that are getting hit more and more and more, and I don't really understand why. It's not like there isn't knob thorns still around. It seems like there's something that has changed in their diets, and I don't know if it's maybe because knob thorns throughout the Kruger system are being protected by all kinds of sort of methods, whether it's creosote in cans or wrapping the trees in wire to keep the elephants from doing it, that they've maybe decided that they're going to start to move on to a different, easier tree, and the marulas is that. It could be, but it's a very interesting thing to see. There's a number of marulas that are taking heavy elephant damage, and normally with, obviously we've been talking about them eating marulas, but they don't normally go for the bark. The tree is normally just used for the fruit and the odd leaves here and there. Bark is normally left alone. So it's a weird shift and change in Ellie's, and it's becoming very noticeable how many marulas are being ring-barked by these guys in the last few weeks and months. You can just see he's just shoving everything in his mouth. It's a beautiful elephant, though. David, the part of his skin that's white is from him dust bathing. So you can see he's quite dark in coloration. He was obviously had a little bath recently. Treehouse Dam is not very far from where we are. So he probably went and had a little swim. And then after that, he would have walked along the road. And the road in this area is very white, the substrate. It's a very sandy soil. And so as he was throwing dust on him, it stuck to his wet body. And that's why you've got these kind of white markings all over him. It's just really dust and bits of sand that make his body appear a little bit lighter like that, or even bits of mud. When they dry, they often dry this much lighter color, and you get this kind of mottled effect on these guys. Hello, boy. Are you turning to show us all of your sides? His trunk will be a little bit lighter in color too, because the grass and ground is still so saturated and wet that they get much like us. They have an ability, well, their fingers go all wrinkly and kind of whiter. It's the same with them and their trunks when they use them in these wet grassy areas. All right, so we'll leave him be and carry on. In the meantime, let's send you across to Kim, something with stripes.
Welcome back. So we just had a herd of zebra, but they've run off right now. But I would like to still show you this beautiful scene that we have unfolding in front of us this morning. We've decided to come back to the western section of our reserve, where we've got these massive open plains, And as you can see, we've got beautiful landscapes in front of us. We've got a little bit of cloud cover, which is very, very welcome. Today's the first day I've been able to wear my jacket since I've come back from leave. So it's a nice change to be wearing a jacket and be nice and warm as opposed to sweating. And we've also got some beautiful blue skies poking through. You can hear lots of birds calling this morning. There's that rufous-napped lark that keeps going. And that'll be on the top of one of these small little bushes here. Very common to hear that bird calling in these open plains. They do tend to call quite often. And today, we were thinking of carrying on looking for some cheetah and perhaps even looking for some rhino and some buffalo in this area. You know, because we've got quite a lot of open grazing plains. It's a very good area for rhino and buffalo. And funny enough, even black rhino. There's pockets of thickets throughout here. A little bit of sickle bush, some young tamboti saplings, and that's the kind of food that they feed on. Also, we did do a burn through this area quite a few months ago, but some of the still burnt wood is around, and black rhino actually do like to feed on that because once it's burnt, it solidifies the nutrients, making it like a sugary sort of sweet taste. And both black rhino and actually elephants like to feed on that, so we often find elephant bulls in this area as well. Lovely to just sit and listen to the sounds around you. I think what we're going to do is we're going to head off into these open areas and see what we find this morning. And we hope that it stays nice and cool and cloudy. And this weather keeps us. Claire, it's a very interesting question. Now, the terrain varies quite a bit throughout Phinda, and it is just, what based on the nutrients and the soil type and rock types in the area, you'll get different vegetation. This area is favored by, big open plains and then clumps of trees. So that's what you'll see here. You'll see often where it's very, very nutrient dense and there's a lot of water, such as in the drainage lines. Those are where you're going to get lots of trees. If there's not a huge amount of water or a very low water table, that's where you'll get things like big open grass plains. So you'll see often along the mountains. In fact, if we scan up there, you can see that's much more favored by trees, lots of dense nutrients in the mountain range there. And then also along the lower lying areas, you'll see thickets of trees there as well. And in between, you'll get these big open plains. So it's all based on the soil type and water table in different areas. I've actually just seen, it looks like a herd of buffalo in the distance. Yeah, there's a herd of buffalo right down there. It's really great to just sit and look around. Often where you spot things from quite a far distance. We say stop and scan as rangers. So we're going to send you over to Steve. He's also looking for some animals at the moment, so maybe he's stopping and scanning where he is. And I'm sure we'll be back with you shortly.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, well, we've been tracking the Pride. We found all of the Pride tracks in the river where it was nice and soft. And they came out. Let me maybe give you an idea of where we found them. Let's go on to the WildEarth map. We found their tracks right here. Let me get something a little bit more user-friendly. Okay, sorry, I can't find anything. Found them right there on quarantine. Tracked them all the way down through Twin Dams. And they've come through here. And somewhere on this little link road here, we've lost them. But they've either crossed south, Tristan's going to be checking Gowrie Main, or they've crossed east. So we're coming straight along this road here. We're going to come down Leadwood and see if we can find where they've maybe come out. There are some reports that there are a few lionesses, the Moanini, which is over here, 3 lionesses over there, but that might be from the tortured Pride from the other day. So it's hard to say. This pride we're following definitely got some cubs, we could tell by the tracks. So I haven't seen a tortured pride in their full entourage. I don't think they've got any youngsters with them, but I could be mistaken. We'll continue and see what we can find. If we don't find them along here, I'll go back to where I had the last tracks there and maybe just have a bit more of a scratch around. But lions can walk quite far. I mean, we've done from camp to Cheetah in a couple of hours on a bushwalk quite easily. And your question is very hard to give an exact answer to. The other day we found tracks, and those lions were found very quickly. Sometimes we find tracks and we find them immediately, and sometimes we don't find them at all. So right now, with the ground being as hard as it is after rain, there's an enormous amount of luck required. And also because the vegetation's so dense and green and overgrown, that even if they were lying right next to the road, we'd have to be very lucky to spot them. So much of a muchness takes me back to a funny story I had with some guests many years ago. We spent the whole morning tracking lions and we found them. I think it took us 5 hours. We found them. It was a marvelous feat of tracking with the trackers I worked with. In the Lobombo Mountains, on the rocks, the guys were just legendary trackers. And we finally found them. And I remember on our way back, one of the guests asked me, "So, Steve, where do you keep all the animals at night?" And I thought to myself, gosh, Mary, we've just spent the whole morning tracking, 5 hours of our time. You can tell we've been very, very busy. And you want to know where we keep them at night. Surely if we knew where we kept them at night, we wouldn't have had to go through this 5 hours of tracking. It was on the same drive, I suppose, that I had someone ask me, "So where, who does the landscaping?" Well, it's a very natural system. Landscaping is done by the animals, the elephants. And you can see how overgrown it is. I drove straight past the road I wanted to check. Okay. Well, we're going to carry on down this road, which is overgrown, and see if we can pick up on any tracks. But it seems like Kim is having far better luck when tracking than we are.
Welcome back. So, Glenn just proved how important it is to stop and scan. He managed to spot some lions for us. Very good spot from quite a tough angle. We came down and here they are. They're lying in our dried up watering hole. As you can see, the mother is very, very fast asleep, but the two young cubs seem to be quite wide awake at the moment. It's always lovely to see lion, and these particular lion I haven't seen since I've got back from leave. I think they've been missing in action a little bit, so it is great to see them pop out into the open. Cute, man. Look at those big ears. Oh, and there's the lioness. She's paying us a little bit of attention. You can see she just opened up her eyes. I'm hoping, because it's a nice cool day, that maybe they get up and still move around a little bit. You know, generally with lion, the earlier you find them, the better. But they are very much dependent on weather. You know, you often find if it's a very hot day, your lions are not going to be doing much. You know, that's the general rule. As of course, in all cases, animals behave exactly how they want to behave. So I have seen them walking around in the heat of the day as well. She's looking off to our left. I don't know if there's something here that's caught her attention. Ah. Glenn's just informed me that there is impala off to our left, and that's what she's possibly looking at. I think they were sleepy lions. They now seem to be a little less sleepy lions, but I think you might be right. She might just flock back down just now. She doesn't have much cause to move at the moment. Problem is if it is impala she's interested in, they're not exactly hidden from view, these lions. So they don't have much chance of catching anything in this spot. You know, they have to very much rely on sneaking up to prey, being within about 10 meters at least, and often a lot closer to have a successful kill, which is very unlikely where they are at the moment. So if she decides she's hungry, she's going to have to move from where she is and find a spot where she's a little bit better concealed. What I love to see is the gaff that one cub has given them. You can see it's probably going to grow into a little bit of a bolder lion. You can see personalities in the cubs coming through from quite an early age. You'll often see one that's more dominant, far more curious, and you'll see other cubs that are definitely mommies, boys and girls, and like to stay very close to the mother at all times. And you can see there's definite difference in personality between these two. The one on the left is much, much more bold. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a male. And the one on the right. Oh, there's an impala right next to them that has not seen them. Look at that, the cub's gone flat. The lioness is actually looking straight that side. She's stalking. She's hidden herself behind a bush. The problem is the cub on the left is completely out in the open. So I don't know how this impala hasn't seen it yet. I think that's what's going to ruin the hunt for them. That impala, that lion cub right next to the mother, is using the smallest bush as cover. I actually cannot believe the impala went that close without spotting them first. See, this distance already is still far too far for that lioness to have a successful hunt. But as this impala is quite relaxed, she might actually still try and use that little bit of brush to try and get closer. But what she's got to do, she's got to wait for her moments when the impala is not looking. This is absolutely unbelievable. That impala is not alarm calling at all. It's definitely noticed the cub. It's now, I think, looking at her. Jessica, I'm just trying to see the wind direction. It is blowing slightly towards the impala. Ah, there it goes. It's running now. It probably could get a little bit of a scent of them. But the problem is that lion scent marks are all over the area as well. So this would be the territory of this pride of lion, and they would scent mark quite regularly. So sometimes animals are confused as to whether it's a fresh scent or if it's just a scent mark that's been left there previously. So they don't always react 100% to scent. They just sort of often more pick up their head and look around very cautiously once they've seen them, or smelt them, sorry. And also with those little small underbrush, as the breeze blows, it will move the scent around. Almost if you've ever seen how smoke swirls, it's the same with scent as it hits an obstacle. So we'll swirl the scent quite a bit. Ah, there we go. That impala is now alarm calling. Shame. This is a very classic example of how cubs can often ruin a hunt for the lionesses. You can see that had those cubs not been there, that lioness would have reacted in the exact right way. She had enough cover there. She got very quickly behind it. And that impala might have even walked right past her and she would have then pounced on it. But that's not going to be the case today. That was a little bit of an adrenaline rush. Darcy Ann, yes, this is exactly those lions. It's the Biola Lioness and the two youngsters. The other two females in the pride, I'm not sure where they are. They do split up quite a bit at the moment, as the one has 3 much older cubs, which will probably dominate these two. So it's in this lioness's interest to keep her cubs away. And the third lioness has actually just given birth a few weeks ago, so she's busy denning at the moment. So we haven't seen her for a little while. We often leave the den sites, not often, we do leave the den sites alone until such time as the lioness chooses to bring her cubs out of the den site, just out of sensitivity. So that was quite an exciting little moment. That impala has run off now. It's run off right into the bushes, so it managed to save itself at the last minute. I suppose it's a good insight to see how close sometimes these animals come to getting eaten by something like a lion or any one of our predators. What's great is now you can see that the interest has been piqued by all those lions. They've now got impala or food on the brain and are staring intently off to their left where there is some more impala. But I think these ones are far less likely to go as close as that other one did. But I do wonder if it's going to spur this lioness on into getting up and moving and maybe looking for an opportunity to hunt. You know, sometimes once they've tried to stalk something, they do get in their brain, okay, I'm quite hungry now. Maybe it's time to get up and move around. I can't see this impala myself. I think they're just around the corner here, behind us. Maybe on the side of this watering hole here. So I think what we'll do is we'll stick with these lions and see what they get up to this morning. Hopefully they're going to get up and move. And we'll be back with you in a little bit.
Well, I hope so, Kim. Hopefully they'll be active and move around. I'm sure Steve is hoping the opposite, in that the tracks that he's following will slow down and stop moving so far, because I think Steve's gone a long way already, which means that we're going to leave him be. We've checked our side just to make sure that they didn't come our way, and there's nothing kind of on the west, so I'm going to turn back towards quarantine and just see if I can get onto those tracks for that leopard that was calling around quarantine last night, and see if we maybe get lucky finding whoever it was that was calling. That's the kind of plan from here, so I'm just sort of slowly trying to head back in that area. It's difficult though to see tracks. I've just driven where kind of Steve first found these lion tracks, and even a pride of lions that are, you know, I mean, if it is the Telematis, should be 15 lions in that pride, which is if you times that by 4, is a lot of footprints. And they are really tricky to see they walked all on this road where we are now, and it's near impossible to see those tracks. So you can imagine a light little leopard, particularly a female, only her 4 little paws and her very light pads are going to be much harder to actually pick up on these roads. So we're going to have to just go slow and steady, and hopefully we'll kind of find some sign of tracks. Not to say that leopard calling was a female, I think it was a male, but it's just going to take a bit of concentration and a little bit of keen eyes in order to find it. Alright, we're going to carry on. We'll try and pick up those tracks. Hopefully we'll have some success in the near future.
These lions are still very intently staring off to our left, although the lioness has started to blink and close her eyes a little bit, so I think she's losing interest in whatever it is. Still can't see what they're looking at, but there was another male impala that was there a little while ago. I think that's what maybe caught their attention. As you can see, she's now turning her head, looking around, which means she's decided it's not the best opportunity. And I quite agree. There's a lot of open ground to cover there. What's good for this lioness though is that if she just gets up and moves a little bit, there's a lot of long grass and bushy areas around this area that you could potentially walk around in. There's a distinct lack of plains game, and the only reason I can think of is that there must have been some alarm calls earlier from animals seeing these lions, so other animals are actually trying to avoid the area. We're very close to that one pan system that provides water for this area. It's one of the few water sources around, so you do generally have a lot of activity around here. So whenever you see a distinct lack of that activity, so you don't see a whole lot of warthog or impala or Ngala or wildebeest and zebra around, then you can quite often guess that there's a large predator that scared them off. Of course, that doesn't mean to say that none of them will come to that area, as we saw that impala just came down. So anything walking through the area that's walked through since the alarm calls won't know that there's danger and won't know to avoid the area. So they do come back here periodically. You can hear the crested barbet calling in the background. I don't think these lions are actually in too much of a hurry to go anywhere because, like I said, it's quite a cool morning. There's a bit of cloud cover. Normally what they'll do is as soon as it starts to get hot, they'll go and find some shade. There's some really nice Bechelia thickets around here, which will provide some really good shade. Then just on the outskirts of this watering hole. So that's where they might head just now, as soon as the sun starts to come out from the clouds. In the meantime, you can imagine why they've picked this spot. Must be quite nice to lie on that open soil. The grass will tickle them and often put a lot of ticks on them, so they do try and avoid the long grass when lying down. It's not incredibly comfortable. Often when you think of animal behavior, the best thing to do is think about what you would do in that situation. Where would you be comfortable? What would you want to do? And you'll see animals often react in the exact same. So when it's raining, they'll seek shelter and cover. When it's hot, they go in the shade. They like to go into those drainage lines. And when they lie down, they like to lie down in an open area that's not too rocky or too filled with grass and things that's going to make it uncomfortable for them to sit there. Gracie, thank you for your question. Yes, they do, but only for a very short period. So a lioness will have a den for generally the first 3 months of her cub's life. And what that means is she finds generally a rocky outcrop or a thicket of some kind where she hides her cubs. And she'll leave them there while she goes off and hunts and comes back and then will suckle them. And the reason is because lions have very short gestations. Their average gestation period is about 110 days. And that's because they need to be able to move around very easily and hunt very effectively. And you can imagine being very heavily pregnant, that's going to affect that. So they rather have short gestations and then let their cubs develop a lot more outside the womb, and that's why they'll have a den site, because the cubs are born very, very small and barely able to walk, blind as well. So they're not able to stick with the pride or hold their own. They'll be very easy targets. So they'll actually rather be born in a den site and then generally introduced to the pride after 3 months. There are cases when the pride already has young cubs. The lioness will actually introduce her cubs earlier as opposed to later, so that they can bond with the other cubs and the pride can bond as one and then travel together. Now the danger of that is if there's too large an age gap between the cubs, then the older cubs sometimes end up killing those brand new cubs. We've actually seen that happen once here. We had a lioness that had cubs that were about 4 months, I think. And then another lioness had given birth, and her cubs were about 1 month, and she introduced them to the pride. And as she introduced them, the older cubs went straight and killed her cubs. She didn't even seem to defend them. She just sort of sat there, and that was the end of that. So it is a bit of a risky maneuver. We've also had another lioness who was very sneaky. We introduced 2 new males who took over the territory, and she was busy denning with cubs of the other male, who they took the territory over from. And what was really, really interesting was that she started mating straight away with the new males. And the reason being is that males will kill cubs that are not their own because they want to bring the female back in estrus. She's unable to have cubs for the first 1.5 years of her cub's life, just so that she can take care of them and give them the attention and focus that they need. And males instinctively know this, so they'll kill any cubs younger than 1.5 years. But in this case, she did a good job to fool them into thinking that those were their cubs. So when she introduced them a little bit later than was normal, so a little bit after 3 months, they actually accepted the cubs as their own. So she was quite a strategic lioness. I think we might stick around here for just a little bit longer, see what these lions get up to and watch their behavior. If she starts falling down and sleeping again, then we might leave, see what else we can find. In the meantime, we're going to send you over to Mole, see what he's managed to find this morning.
Alrighty guys, so we've left the 2 male cheetahs. They're still lying down, deciding what they want to do today. Hopefully they'll look to hunt a little later on. However, it is getting quite warm, so I think that if they don't do it in the next, let's say, half an hour, it's going to be a bit warm for them. So we came here to the one of the burrow systems of the Rockstar group. So for those of you who were following us up until maybe about a month ago, they used to operate quite a bit around the far burrow, which is where they also had their pups. This one is just across the road from it though, and they've been coming here now the last 2 nights, which is completely normal for the meerkats to do. You know, they have different burrow systems throughout their territory which they'll utilize depending on the availability of insects, and then also you know, moving around quite a bit every now and again just to make sure that the smell inside the burrow is not too strong for things like, you know, maybe a honey badger or a snake or something like that to pick up on. It will put them at risk. So yeah, we've been seeing the meerkats move around quite a bit now lately. Not that they need to actually, you know, because of all the rain we've had, quite a lot of insect activity throughout all of the areas in the territory. But I do think it is more of a safety thing that they're doing now when they move from burrow system to burrow system. They haven't woken up. As we know, the Rockstars like their late sleep. This burrow system, also specifically where they went in last night, it was facing more towards the west. So as you can see, the burrows that we're focusing on at the moment is still nicely in the shade. That should change soon, and I think when that happens, as soon as the sun starts hitting the burrows where they were in, they'll come out. Sorry, Gwen, just repeat that.
Well, unfortunately, there's a little bit of a technical issue in Tswalu, which means that you are now with us here in Djuma, and just in time too, because we've just got visual of Tingana. It's not very good visual, but it is visual. Is sitting a few meters off the road, but well, you wouldn't even know if he puts his head down because of how well he's camouflaged. So he's just on my left side here, in the road itself. Well, like I say, not in the road, but just lying between those little bushes. You can just kind of pick up his ears sticking out of the long grass. It's not a great view, but eventually we'll hopefully see him standing up and starting to move around. Now, I'm not sure it's him that was calling, because the tracks that I found on quarantine actually were for a female that walked past. So I'm not sure, maybe he was around, maybe it was him calling and there was a female also in the area. It's pretty tricky because between a herd of elephants and that pride of lions, they've walked all over those tracks, so can't really see nicely what's going on there. There's just one track of a female that I saw in amongst all of that, heading kind of in this direction, and then obviously he's kind of sitting just next to the road. But very cool to see the Duke. It's always nice to have him. I'm hoping he's going to get up and move a little bit and find a better spot where we can see him a little bit more clearly than this, because like I say, it's not exactly the greatest view of a leopard, is it? We've certainly had better over the years. Amazing that he's still going strong, though, isn't it? When you start to kind of add up all his years and all his kind of moments, the fact that he is still with us and still going strong and seemingly doesn't look like he's aging at all. He really is one of those amazing cats that you get every now and then, that's able to survive longer than many others that are in the area, that's for sure. Tammy, indeed, it's always nice to see the Duke. He's a welcome additional sight to most of us. There are one or two people that are not a huge fan of Tingana because of his previous infringements, should we call it, against other leopards. I mean, he has killed one or two, but that's just natural behavior for a male leopard. It's not like he is a horrible leopard that's doing it out of malice. It's just out of instinct and survival. But I think he's an absolutely amazing cat, and I know most of you feel the same. He's been around for so long that he kind of has wormed his way into the hearts of many. But look, when he puts his head down now, it gives you an idea of what we are dealing with when we're trying to spot these cats. I mean, that is a zoomed in view of his coat in the grass. It's not exactly easy to see them if they are not on the roads or on an elevated point. We got very lucky yesterday with Shadulu, because all we saw was this little white tip of the tail just twitch in the grass a long way away, and eventually she kind of came out and we got to see her. But with Tandi and Zutini, we're just lucky that they are on termite mounds and trees, because once they're in the grass like this, they can camouflage so well, and it becomes really tricky finding them if they're not in a place where it's on a road or up on some sort of elevated surface. But this is quite typical for the Dukies, often found just sleeping like this in the mornings. The good news is the clouds are starting to break, and so maybe we'll get some sun, and where he's lying now there's not going to be any shade, which hopefully will make him start to move a little bit to find some. In the meantime, though, Kim sounds like she's having more luck with her cats moving, so let's send you across to her.
Tristan, sorry to say, but it's not a mobile cat, it's a immobile cat. But our sun is breaking out and certainly starting to shine on this beautiful scene. Unfortunately, our Lioness has decided that she is quite comfortable and has laid down. And the other cub's actually gone to join them. gone into that thicket area. I think what they're doing is they're starting to seek that little bit of shade that those bushes are sort of providing. And that's exactly why it came over. Oh, quite sweet. That one cub actually just had its paw on the other one's back. It was lovely to see. Amazing how you can imagine now it would be difficult to spot these lions, based on where you're coming in from. Mandy, it's a very good question. Look, from probably about 1.5 years, they'll start actually assisting. From 2 years, they start really getting involved in the hunts. And from about 2.5, they're efficient hunters. What might happen now is, it seems quite cool, but if the but if the lioness manages to make or injure a small animal, she will sometimes leave it for the cubs to play with, so they can practice stalking and pouncing and killing it. So often around lambing season, if they manage to injure a lamb or a warthog piglet or something, they'll give it to the cubs to figure out what to do with it. In fact, not long ago, the cubs that are a few months older than these ones, the lioness actually left a warthog piglet for them to mess around with. It was dead at the time, but she could see she just left it for them to sort of play with and grab and fight over, because all of those skills are important for them to develop from an early age. But these two, as you could see by their behavior, are certainly by no means efficient hunters yet, and they've still got quite a long way to go. This is such a stunning morning. I'm really enjoying this breeze that's going past us. You can see there's some butterflies coming into the scene now as well. It's quite apparent as how, if you notice the lioness's coat, how it's not as camouflaged as that leopard you saw earlier, and cheetah, something with, a few spots on it. You can see that one prominent color stands out really clearly. I suppose it could look like a rock or something, but it does draw your attention almost straight away. And those spots and rosette patterns always serve to break the camouflage or break the outline really nicely and allow them to blend in with the background. So it's interesting that the lions aren't as well camouflaged, but I suppose in a way it makes a lot of sense, because they are very efficient hunters. They've got a lot of muscle, they're at the top of the food chain already, and they have that added advantage that they generally hunt in a pride, which gives them a lot more, chances to actually catch something. So if they were to have a really good camouflage on top of all of that, they would just be far too efficient at hunting and probably decimate the plains game population very, very quickly. In fact, we had one pride that was unbelievably good at hunting. There was something about the lionesses, and they were always hunting. I think they enjoyed it. So they would have a fresh carcass and they would see another opportunity and they would go for it. And all lions are opportunistic, but these two were just very impressive hunters. And there was actually one day that we found 4 carcasses in a row. There was 2 zebra and 2 wildebeest. I think we nicknamed it the Red Wedding from that Game of Thrones episode, because it was just carnage that went on that road. None of them very touched at all by the lions. They fed a little bit here and there. At least there was no fighting amongst the lions over the carcass, because there was just so much food available for them all to eat. And that's to give you an idea of how incredibly efficient lions are at hunting. So I think these ones have settled down for now. If they're going to move at all, I predicted they might move just into a bit more shade. So we are going to head off and see what else we can find. We might actually just stay here for a little bit longer You can hear that there's a lot of roller activity at the moment. You can hear those rollers going mad. We did see a Warburg's eagle off to our right. They're sitting high up on the mountain. So we think, not high up on the mountain, sorry. It's just a little bit of a rocky outcrop off to our right. And sitting there, I think it might be upsetting these rollers. So I think we're going to head off and see what else we can find. You see that these lions are probably just going to go into the shade. You can see the cubs are now starting to get a little bit irritated by the sun. They're finding, there we go, there's a slightly bigger patch of shade for that one to lie in.
Our first WildEarth Explorers competition has closed. And we have a winner. Congratulations to Chantal Sleep from Benoni in South Africa.
I felt totally overwhelmed for winning this prize. I will be taking my son with me, and I can't wait to share this experience with him.
Chantal and her son have won a behind-the-scenes WildEarth experience at the magnificent and beyond Ngala tented safari camp. The prize includes a 3-night stay and a chance to sleep out in the unique Ngala treehouse.
I would like to thank WildEarth for making this dream come true, and I encourage everybody to subscribe, to become an explorer, and stand the chance to win these amazing prizes, and so much more.
For this month, we have a brand new prize. You could be jetting off to Tswalu in the Kalahari for a 3-night stay at the luxurious Motsi Lodge. Open to all WildEarth explorers who have signed up before the end of January 2021. Terms and conditions apply.
This is Rusty. He's my favorite vehicle, and we've been through all the good times here in the bush. Now, if you feel a connection to Djuma Game Reserve like I do, then we have a fantastic opportunity for you. You can have your name engraved on a brushed metal plaque just like this one, and we will attach it to Rusty so you can always be with us on safari in spirit. We will even send you a digital photograph once your plaque is mounted on Rusty. Spaces are limited, so grab your spot now. Africa is very special, and when you come down here, even when you're watching through our camera, the landscapes change from desert to bushveld to up in the Masai Mara where there's grassland. That means that the biodiversity changes as we move along Africa. And what I love most about connecting with you guys is the fact that I get to share these wonderful experiences with thousands of people.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Torchwood, and well, we've been trying to follow up on the tracks of the lions, and now we've got ourselves our own little elephant roadblock. So we found tracks of a pride that seemed to be crossing Cheetah cut line, but on chatting with Tristan, it sounds like that might also be in the same tracks of the 3 lionesses of the Tortured Pride that were in that area yesterday. So we're just doing a big loop around just to double check the freshness. It's tricky because the lionesses the day before would have walked during the rain and after the rain, and there have been 3 lionesses found sort of on Cheetah side that are probably of the Tortured Pride from the day before. We have been following tracks of an entire pride, but right now we're watching this beautiful big male elephant as he picks up marula fruits as if they were peanuts. And he's watching us, everybody. If you know anything about horses, elephants look backwards over their left shoulder, just like horses do. See how he's going to turn. He's watching us. He pretends he's not watching us, but he's watching us very closely. Justin, you want to know how much an elephant can eat in a day? Well, this fellow right here is not a fully grown male elephant, so probably in the region of 275, 300 kilograms of wet food per day, but that's an estimate. A fully grown male elephant feeds about 350 kilograms, so about 700 pounds of food. Now, if you've ever tried to just move that amount of stuff around, that takes you all day. An elephant's got to chew it and ingest it and swallow it and digest it. Their digestive system is constantly moving. So it's every 45 minutes to an hour, an elephant will drop a large amount of poo. Imagine 22 odd toilet breaks a day. That's an enormous amount of compost being refined. A very important process, of course, everybody. Well, first of all, these marula fruits are being designed to be eaten and ingested, and they will slowly but surely emerge out the opposite end of the elephant in a beautiful pile of elephant dung, compost and manure, where they have a very good chance of survival if the squirrels don't get to them first. So you can see he's not really looking at what he's looking for. He's just using his nose to smell the fruit. And they do smell very, very nice. Mark, you want to know why elephant bulls are always solitary? They're not always solitary. You often find groups of them together. And they generally, when it comes to this time of year, the big dominant male bulls will become more solitary in the fact that they come into must in the summer months. Must is a heightened state of sexual awareness and aggression, sort of leads to a bit more aggression, whereby the big males are looking to find the herds and the females for breeding purposes. So during that time, his testosterone levels are a little bit too high to be hanging out with any friends. He's just not very nice to his fellows. So they go off on their long missions looking for the breeding herds, and they're quite competitive with each other at that stage. But as soon as the testosterone levels wither away and dissipate and the must recedes, they often find groups of males together. I've seen groups of males in the region of 15, 16 males together. And, they also, when they're following herds, aren't solitary. They're in and amongst the herd, but they definitely are an isolated unit on their own. Herds don't often want too much to do with them. They can range very far and wide in search of food, as well as in search of the ladies. And when must arrives, they often find the bulls don't do enough eating, because they've got something else on the mind, and that in a big bull can last for 3 months. 3 months. So this is the prime breeding period for females in the summer months, because the vegetation is lots and lots of high nutrition, lots of fruit, lots of bark, leaves, as well as grass. And due to the grasses and the density of the vegetation, sometimes it's not that easy for someone even like Tristan to spot a leopard.
The elephants do love the grasses, and I think Tingana is loving his little grassy bed as well, especially given that he's got a little fat tummy, which makes me wonder where the sausage has been eating in the last day. It seems like he must have got a meal last night somewhere. What he had or where he had it, I'm not sure. Maybe he got himself like a little impala lamb or something like that. It's not a massive meal that he's had, but he's definitely got a little fat tummy, that's for sure. And that's always nice to see. I like when I see Tingana kind of healthy and rounded. It's always good to know that he's in good condition and still finding food fairly easily. This time of the year, it's easier for these experienced individuals. They know very well how to manipulate the system, and that there's a lot of young and vulnerable animals out there to be taken. And so an experienced cat like Tingana will be utilizing that to his advantage and going after things like those little impala lambs, little baby duikers, even scrub hares to a degree, little baby scrub hares that are not experienced enough to know how to evade a predator. And that's how he'll be able to take advantage of them. Not that he looks like he's capable of taking advantage of anything right now other than, like I say, a bit of a nap. The good news, though, is the sun is coming out. And so with the sun coming out, that might drive him to kind of stand up and move. There's also a bull elephant somewhere close by. I think it's a bull elephant at least, because there's branches being broken at a rate of knots all around us. And maybe that will come through and kind of pique his attention and we'll start to see him waking up. It's amazing. There was a branch that was broken just now that sounded like a gunshot going off next to us, and he did not even flinch. He just carried on sleeping as though he's heard it all before. Now, I think it was rude. He does look happy and fat, doesn't he? He looks as though he's a happy kitty with his little round tummy. I mean, it's not as full as it could be. I've seen him fatter and it's more sausage-like than this, but it's definitely got a nice little bump to it, which is always good news. You know, as he starts to get older, the fear of him struggling to find food is going to become more and more real. You know, as his teeth start to wear down, as his body starts to break down and he starts to get a little bit slower, you know, finding meals and actually killing becomes that much harder for male leopards, and their body condition then starts to deteriorate because of it. So when you see him with good kind of bulk and size and fat tummy, it just means that he's still coping fairly well and is finding the food that he needs and is able to kind of look after himself. So I'm glad that he is in the condition he's in, because it'll be a very sad day, the day that we don't see Tingana anymore. I hope that whatever does happen to him, because you know, you form these sort of bonds with these cats over the years, and it's been 10 years of watching Tingana roaming around this area, that, you know, if whatever does happen to him, because it's inevitable that something will happen to him, that it's not a drawn out, long suffering. That's the worst thing that can happen when you see cats kind of, you know, really suffering or getting injured by another male or hyenas, and then having to kind of deal with those injuries at their age. It's never that nice. You always kind of hope that whatever's going to happen, it's fairly quick. And that's probably the best example of that was Salaesh. She was on a diker kill. She finished it up. She came down the tree. She's walked around, scent marked, vocalized, went and lay down. And in the afternoon, she was no longer with us. So that's kind of a peaceful, quick end is probably more of what you want than a long, drawn-out, painful kind of injury or, you know, starvation or anything like that. Even though it can be tricky to kind of watch sometimes when they are a little bit skinny and they are kind of starving out, at least it's a sign that a leopard we've afforded a leopard the chance to live out its natural life, which is also, I suppose, one way to look at it. Daniel, how many cubs has Tingana sired successfully? Not 100% sure, because some of them have kind of disappeared and we don't really know, haven't got too many updates on them, but I don't know if we've ever even done a count on this. I'd have to go back and just start looking. There's also a lot of cubs that we're not 100% sure are his. We think they're his, but we don't know 100%. But let's say the ones that we do know would be Tiani, Tlalamba. We think Hosana and Shongile would be his. They should be his. Just trying to think now through all of there's a letter from Insele. I forget the name now. That should be his as well. I don't know if it was ever checked, but Tsakani could potentially be Tingana's. Tamba. Who else am I missing? There's probably a few others as well. What's interesting though is Tingana, even though he's been here for so many years, the one female that he mated with more than most others was Shadow, funny enough. And the weird part about it is that he spent a lot of time covering her, because unfortunately she had a tough sort of existence in that she was on the fringes of male territories, and so she lost a lot of cubs. So he mated with her quite regularly, and actually a lot of his cubs that he's produced was with her, which, as we know, unfortunately didn't survive, bar the one, which we don't know where he is anymore. He distributed away from this area quite a while ago, and his name is Sindile. He unfortunately, the last sort of, he had a collar on for a little bit, but his movements were showing that he was pushing further and further into the Kruger Park area. And so that he hopefully has ended up claiming a territory somewhere there. So he also would be a Tingana baby. Just trying to run through them. It's a long time and a lot of different leopards, and some have survived and some haven't. But it's a fair amount. I mean, he's done well for a male leopard. He's managed to provide a safe haven for a number of the females that he has covered. It was just Shadow that he had really kind of struggled with covering her territory and keeping her cubs safe. They had a lot of issues with other males and hyenas and various other things. Okay, it sounds like there's another Ellie coming fairly close towards where we are, but talking about elephants, let's send you across to Steve. It sounds like he's got a little one.
Well, thanks, Tristan. I haven't seen Tingana in ages. Blessed that you're able to see him again. What a fantastic fellow he is. And this elephant is a fantastic fellow too, although we aren't able to get past. Monday morning rush hour traffic here in Torchwood, everybody. I know many of you out there are thinking, well, I wouldn't mind being stuck in such a roadblock. Yes, this is definitely a pleasant way to spend the morning. You see, his eyes are very soft. It's something I talk about often with elephant, the eyes. You can almost not even see the eye inside. It's brown. An elephant that's not relaxed, the eye will be flaring, and you'll actually see the whites around the outside. You might see the temporal gland secretion. That doesn't necessarily mean the animal's in must. Temporal gland secretions are also a system or a product of stress. Elephant bulls in must have got what we call green penis syndrome, which we can't see at the moment because he's behind the bush. But the sort of penis sheath area will be dribbling urine, and it'll actually get that like rusty copper sort of look to it. If you've ever seen water that's run over copper pipes a long time, it gets that green sort of coloration. That's what you'll see, the elephant bull in must. And you'll also smell him if the wind is in the right direction. So I can't see any green penis on him. Oh, hang on, he's got a little bit of a dribbly, a little bit wet. Might be early stages. We can have a look. Love the wrinkles. It's hard for me to say. I think it's just the skin that grows and it stretches to a point where it can't stretch anymore. Oh, he's going to push a little bit, are you? Oh, he's pushing the vegetation out the way as he looks for more marulas. I think they're just growing into their skin throughout their life. But I don't know what the purpose of them really is. Essentially, the wrinkles mean that the surface area is even further increased. Now, surface area is a very important element in animal energy consumption and utilization. And you have a look at his penis sheath there, Marcello. It's looking a little bit, oh, he's gone behind the bush again. It's looking a little bit wet. But it's not overly wet at the moment, so it might be that he's only coming into must. Normally the legs will be streaming, be very moist along the inside of the legs, and you'll get this very green, coppery feel. Maybe he's about to enter the stage of must, and so he's trying to get as many snacks and protein and vitamin C as he can. So surface area in animals is a very important element with regards to what is their energy requirement. So the bigger the animal's body means that they've actually got a lower body volume to the surface area, or increased volume to surface area. If you think about an ice cube, for example, if you take a really big block of ice, a really big one, like a 20-liter block, and you put it in water, or you put a little ice cube in water, just a small one, like you'd put it in a drink, which one will melt quicker? Now, essentially, the smaller ice cube has got a much larger surface area to volume, so it dissolves quicker, whereas the much bigger ice cube has got a much smaller volume to surface, and so, surface to volume, and so it melts a lot slower. So essentially, that is what elephants are. A big male elephant has got an enormous body volume, and so he gives off heat very slowly. You think about small animals like shrews or gerbils, Small birds, they require enormous amounts of energy to sustain their body processes. Even a small elephant requires much larger energy requirement than a big adult. Same as babies, human babies. They have to feed regularly and they can't eat any nonsense. Has to all be pretty good, nutrient-rich milk. That's essentially surface area to volume ratio, which is a very important element in nature. You can also compare a normal broadleaf versus a succulent. A succulent is designed exactly that way to increase the volume to the surface, which means that they reduce the amount of water loss and the amount of heat gain at the same time. Takes a lot more time. Oh, he's had enough. A lot more time to heat up a bigger body than it takes to heat up a smaller body. And same, it takes a lot longer for a bigger body to cool down than it does for a smaller body. Hence why skinnier people or smaller people, smaller in stature, get cold much easier than a little bit more heavy-set people. It's all about the surface area to volume ratio. It's a very important element in nature to discuss because the larger an animal is, the lower their general nutrient requirement is. So they can eat a lot of bulk, a lot of low-quality stuff, but bulk is essential. So that is how elephant herds are interacting. The females need to produce nice milk. They need to move in relation to the food requirements, energy requirements of the calves, whereas the bulls can range into much nutrient-poorer areas where they can get enormous amounts of bulk, which will offset the actual energy requirement. Okay, well, we're going to try to get past our hulk of elephant here, and we send you back over to andBeyond Phinda with Kim.
So last you were with us, we were with that lioness with the two cubs that were trying to find a little bit of shade. We decided to go on off and see what else we could find, and we managed to find some tracks of male lion walking up one of the roads, and we tracked them for a little while, and we came across these two sleepy males. What's quite interesting is that the one at least has walked quite a significant distance over the night time. There were quite a few vehicles on the other side of the mountain busy looking for him. So he's managed to walk quite a few kilometers to meet up with his brother during the night. And this is the result right here. Two very sleepy lions after they've walked a significant distance. And what they would have done is they often separate when they do their territorial patrols. You can imagine we've got about 30,000 hectares on Phinda of land. And these males control about half of that area. So about 15,000 hectares that they need to regularly patrol and walk around and check that there's no male intruders coming in to try and challenge them for their territory. So it makes much more sense for them to split up and walk different sections, which is exactly what they've done in the last few days. And then they will manage to meet up based both on getting the scent of each other and also calling. Just looking at that one at the back's belly, it actually looks quite full. So he's managed to feed on something. This one closer to me certainly doesn't look like he's got a full belly. If we have a look at his hip bones, it's protruding a little bit up above the stomach at the moment, showing that the stomach's a bit concave by the leg. So it's not as full. So what might have happened is that one at the back might have come across one of the prides of the lionesses and maybe fed with them, or maybe even caught something for himself. You know, people often say male lions don't hunt, they leave it to the lionesses. It's a bit unfair to the poor male lions. They're very capable of hunting. In fact, these two males have brought down massive animals, including buffalo and giraffe. So very efficient hunters. It's just they won't hunt if they can avoid it. They'd rather let the lionesses do it if they're with the pride, because the lionesses are more camouflaged and do hunt a bit more often. And also the male lions know there's no need for them to expend the energy. They'll just let the lionesses do the hunting, and then they grab the kill straight afterwards and feed, so they still get preference when feeding. When they will hunt with the pride is when the pride requires their strength. Hammond, their territory is close to 15,000 hectares. It expands. It's maybe actually a little bit less, because there's certain sections in this section of the reserve that they don't walk into. But yeah, it's about, I would say, maybe roughly, let's say 13,000 hectares. That's about the size of their territory. It does vary with prides of lion, and it will vary based on the territorial boundaries of other males. It will vary based on the number of males in a coalition. The bigger the coalition, the larger the territory that they can take over. Also, the availability of food. If there's not a lot of food, then they have to try and expand their territory as much as possible to open up to more hunting opportunities. So it does vary, but they've got a very large territory, these two males. It's about 13,000 hectares. That being said, there's sections of territory that they spend a lot more time in, and there's sections that we hardly ever see them do territorial patrols in. And the reason for this is that there's not a lot of activity of their prides in that area, of the prides of lionesses that they have taken over. There's also not a lot of food availability in those areas, and there's no scent of another male close by or anything that makes them feel like that territory is something that they need to be concerned about. You'll see this section of the reserve is where they spend most of their time, and it's because we have a nomadic male, what we used to call a Sutton male. He was the original dominant male in this area, and when they were introduced, they challenged him for his territory, and they drove him into the far northwestern section of the reserve, and he's been hiding out there. So they've obviously got the scent or heard him every now and then. They know he's the biggest threat to their territory, so they'll spend a lot of time here, which is just on the outskirts of where he spends most of his time, just to make sure. He's actually popped out twice since they've kicked him out of the territory. So he's come out twice since they've actually taken over the territory to try and challenge them again, and both times has been kicked back out. Teresa says they're having sweet lion dreams, and I think so. It's quite sweet. Sometimes you actually see them flinch just like humans. You'll see the paw flick occasionally, sometimes even growl, or, well, not growl, but moan in their sleep a little bit. I think they've found a really nice cool spot. You can see it's really nice and shaded, and they've got this lovely breeze that's blowing over them. You can imagine it must be really hot for them with that big mane. It was nice and cool just maybe 20 minutes ago. I had my jacket on and everything, but in that time the clouds have completely disappeared, the sun has come out, and the heat of the day has come with it. So I think they've picked their spot well. Picked their spot very well for the morning, and I don't see them going very far. In fact, what they might do, because as the sun comes up, this little patch of trees is going to lose its shade, but lucky for them, there is a drainage line off to their left, which will stay shady throughout the day. So I think as soon as the sun starts to bother them a little bit, they're going to probably move from here into this drainage line off to the left and spend the rest of the afternoon there until the evening. Bobby, they are massive. It's unbelievable. Male lions, it can be 250 to 270 kilograms. And just look at those paws. Just zoom in there and have a look. That is about the size of my face. Granted, I have a very little face, so maybe it's not the same size as most people's faces, but it is very big indeed. Thanks very much. Yeah, so they are very, very big indeed. One of the rangers just drove past and told me that there's a better angle from that side to get a good view of the face. Oh, and as she says that, classic, Look at that one rolling over. Oh, that is such a big belly. Oh my word. I actually think, let me reverse and follow up on her little hint there and get that angle for you so we can see that one's face. That one at the far back is the one without the scar. So those of you who follow the show quite a lot. These are our Biala male lions, the dominant coalition that we have in the south of Phinda Private Game Reserve. And we have 2 of these males, one with a very big scar on his face and one without. Now, our last theory is the one with the scar on the face is the dominant one, but it can change actually between the 2 male lions. It can be quite hard to say for certain which is the more dominant one. There. Oh. Look at those eyes. They're actually both looking up at us at the moment. Absolutely stunning. What's really nice is we can see the scars from this angle. You can see this male has got a lot of scars, both above his eye, on his nose. And funny enough, most got a fresh. If we look at his left paw, there's a few fresh scars there. Not very bad at all. Just a light scar. But most of these would actually be from fighting with his other lionesses. So I think we might leave these 2 male lions. They seem to be very sleepy. I don't see them doing too much for the rest of the morning. And we'll see what else we can find for you.
Well, talking about sleepy lions, you can see we've got a sleepy cat. The good news, though, as you can also see, is that the sun really is out and hitting him quite heavily in the head, particularly, and along the shoulders, which hopefully is going to drive him to start waking up and actually moving. I don't think he'll move far if he does move, but it'll be nice if we can just get a little bit of kind of walking from him and then him flopping back down in some sort of shady section. We know that Tingana often likes to move around, but what has also come up heavily is the wind, and I'm going to keep quiet for a little bit so you guys can just listen to the wind blowing. It's quite amazing how strong it's getting this morning. There's these big gusts that are coming through, and generally that's what's blowing the clouds away, but it's also quite uncomfortable having wind blasting you in the face all the time, which is maybe why Tingana's having a rest. Right, well, we'll sit with him a little bit longer. Hopefully he will eventually get up and show us his beautiful face.
Hello everybody, welcome to First Rock on Torchwood, a wonderful geological sort of landmark here. We're standing on ancient granitic rock that has basically emerged out from underneath the many, many layers of sedimentary rock that would have extended high above our head all the way back to the Drakensberg. And here we've just got a little nugget of granite that is exposed out. So this morning, everybody, I'm going to be doing a couple of segments on a wonderful medicinal plant that we find locally. and I thought, why not start from A? So we've got a wonderful plant here called the African weeping wattle. So now, first of all, let me just show you. Apparently we are out of sync. So what we have got here is a beautiful, beautiful plant, a very easy plant to identify. Now, I've gone and harvested just a small branch and a little bit of bark. Now, when it comes to harvesting medicinal plants, there are 27 million users in South Africa alone that use medicinal plants in nature for medicine, and this is one of many. Now, when you harvest, it's always important to be sustainable. You don't want to go and kill the plant, so harvesting roots and harvesting bark is often quite difficult and can be quite detrimental to the tree. So if you are going to harvest, make sure you use best practice. So I've harvested a branch here, a couple of seeds, a couple of pods. But when you want to harvest or you want to identify a plant, first of all, the best way of doing so is by getting a leaf structure, so more than one leaf, and then some pods or flowers. To arrive at a party with just one leaf and to say to someone, what is this? Some trees are doable, but many, many other trees are not. So whenever you want to identify a plant, make sure you get as many characteristics of the plant as you can. Other characteristics to take advantage of or take note of are the habitat, where the tree is growing, the shape and structure of the tree, as well as the bark, which is very, very, very important. So with this type of plant, you have a look that this is the leaf. This entire thing over here is the leaf, and you can tell that because right here at the base is the auxiliary bud or axillary bud. That's the growing point. So this entire piece over here is the leaf. Entire thing is a leaf. So it is one leaf that is then divided at least once, and then it's divided twice. So this is a twice divided leaf. And you'll easily be able to find that in any book you're looking for, a leaf that's been divided once and then twice. We call it bipinnately compound. Don't worry too much about the words, but just know that it's not a simple leaf. A simple leaf, this entire thing, sorry about the wind, this entire thing would be a leaf. But here this is broken up into one and then two different types. Is that easy enough for you to remember? And once you've got that, you'll easily be able to find this. All of the acacias that we have are divided like this. The sickle bush, this is the African weeping wattle, which is one of the very common trees you find around here that provides enormous amounts of shade and livelihood for insects and all sorts of animals. We have a bug called the spittle bug, which associates quite strongly with this tree and often leads to a little bit of moisture. A little bit of moisture that gets let down as the bugs eat into the sap. So the pod of the tree is quite nice to see. It's a boat-like shape and structure, which means that these are probably distributed by water. So if you take it off, you can see it's a boat that will flow quite nicely, but then it's probably also eaten by animals such as elephant, kudu, and then the seed itself, which you find inside. They're not quite ripe just yet. Seed inside. There's a couple of them in here. Let me just break open that fiber, and there is the seed. There we go. And that will be distributed either through an animal or through some water distribution. And then it will find itself in its perfect habitat where it will grow and continue to do its thing. So medicinal plants, everybody, are a vital part of understanding the culture and traditions of local communities. And I like to bring back into the community, or try to bring back some knowledge. Obviously, I'm not a traditional healer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medicine man, but I try and bring back local information, knowledge from the wilderness to the present, so that we can sort of assess and analyze and sort of gauge what went on in the past. And many of these medicines are still used today. But before we go further into the depth of some of the medicines, it's important that if you do have any medicine or prescription drugs or medication that you're taking, that you stick with that. You don't suddenly say, Steve said, I can take this, it's going to cure my ailment. So by all means, you're welcome to try things at home, but don't go and change your prescription medication because I said so. I'm not a doctor, but I like to bring this information back, and traditional healers will prescribe many of these medicines to people with their health concerns all over Africa, all over the world. And many of the pharmaceutical drugs we find today have all got origins in nature, and nature is beautiful and grows wildly for us. So I'm going to need to start sort of setting up my beginning show of this, because I've got to get some water boiled, harvest some of this bark down into a usable product, and then get everything ready and going so that when you come back to us, we're going to have something we can taste, drink, and enjoy. But it seems like we're going to send you back over to Kim. I think she's still with her lions.
Well, unfortunately, a little bit of a technical difficulty at Phinda, but as you can see, Tingana is away. His head is up. Like I said, I'm pretty sure the sun is getting a little bit warm in his face, and that's why he's starting to think about potentially moving. He's just going to roll his bottom over. No, we're not on the best side, but unfortunately, it's the kind of no off-roading. We're just on the edge of the road, and this is the sort of best view we can get. There's another car on the other side, so we won't be able to see much of his face unless he kind of looks over his shoulder. So for now, we've got a little candy cane tail that's kind of wrapping around, and then his back and his quite impressive neck. It's one thing that's always been a feature of Tingana is his size of his neck. He's got a big dewlap. It's always been big, and it's kind of maintained all the way through his life. But if you look at his kind of shoulder areas, if you look through his back and then going up to his shoulders, he's actually got thicker shoulders and neck area than his kind of midriff. It's quite amazing how big his sort of neck area is. It's one solid block. There's no kind of cutting in from the ears like you see with most leopards. He really does have a serious size head. What you can also see is that his ears are starting to show his age a little bit. You'll notice that the fringes of the ears are all nicked and kind of gnarled, and most of that will be from ticks. If you look on the left here, actually, there's unfortunately a little bit of a branch there, but you might just be able to see it when the branch moves. There's a little shiny spot, and that is a tick on the tip of the ear, and as the years go by and the ticks get onto the ears, slowly they degrade the edgings of the ears, particularly, and older leopards start to show their age through the way the ear kind of appears. It starts to look tattier and kind of as though it's been sort of chewed on the edges. And this time of the year, it's very common to see these guys covered in ticks, particularly behind the head. You'll see he's got another one on his neck that's kind of in between his ears. That's where they mostly congregate. Victor, no, leopards are not larger than jaguars. Jaguars are bigger. So to give you an idea, male jaguar would be about the size, a little bit shy of a lioness, and a female jaguar about the size, a little bit lighter than probably a big male leopard. So they're a lot chunkier and bigger than what the leopards are. They kind of sit between lions and leopards in terms of their size. Their feet are also very, very big, jaguars, and their tail's quite short and stumpy in comparison to a leopard's tail. Leopard kind of tail looks as though it's perfectly suited for its body and the same length as it is as the body is, whereas jaguar is a little bit shorter and like I say, less. I think they don't have as nice a tail, put it that way, as what a leopard does. Beautiful animals, those jaguars. They've got incredible spot patterns on them, and like I say, their size is something to behold. I personally haven't gotten to see jaguars in the wild yet. It's a life goal that I will eventually get around to doing, hopefully at some point when we can travel a lot more than what we can right now. But yeah, it would be one of the ones that is high up on my list to go and see. It's an incredible animal, and the way that it operates is always so interesting as well, by being on the banks of these rivers, and then even hunting in the water itself, which is quite crazy. Okay, our leopard is still just sitting with his head up and hasn't decided to move just yet, but it sounds like Kim's lions have decided to wake up.
So after all of that, we actually decided to stay with these male lions. As we decided to leave, a wildebeest actually walked straight past, and it was instantaneous. Both males had their heads straight up. It was quite interesting to see how quickly they both picked up on the wildebeest. It was actually a while after they had their heads up that we noticed the wildebeest itself. So they actually heard it rather than saw it first. So it's amazing to see how good their senses are. You can see that one in front has actually got its paw right on that log. It's doing such a cute little stretch. Interesting way to keep itself comfortable. I know I would get pins and needles if I had to lie with my arm elevated like that. It's obviously comfortable for him. And I think that gives you a good idea of how big those paws are. Tony, yes, they do. If you actually have a look now, you can see that you can't actually see any claws out. So that's because they're retracted currently. They'll be able to take them out whenever they need to use them. So during a hunt, essentially, as they jump onto the back of a prey, then their claws will come out and will go deep into the animal. And they use this because they need to keep those claws sharp. So both lion and leopard will have retractable claws. Cheetah are the ones that claws do not retract because they don't actually use their claws so much when hunting. They actually trip their prey rather, and their claws are more used for traction as they're running around. So sort of like the spikes in rugby player or soccer players' boots that help them grip on the ground. It's the same with the cheetah. So thanks very much for that question. You can actually see the results of having sharp claws if you look further up that paw. There, there's two gouge marks and then another scar a little bit further up. So those aren't super fresh. You can see they've healed over quite nicely. They're not bleeding, but not incredibly old because those ones are still red at the bottom. They haven't turned black or healed completely. So those are definitely from a claw. You can see just the shape of it and how clean the cut is. Would have been from a claw. So possibly with the brother fighting over a female in the estrus, or even we've got two female lions on the reserve at the moment with quite young cubs. And I think, should the males get too close to the cubs, the lionesses are very, very protective of those cubs as well. So the lioness could even give him a bit of a swat to make sure he keeps his distance from the cubs and he plays nicely with them. Because they are very nervous of male lions around their cubs, understandably. Even the fathers of the cubs. There have been cases where one male out of a coalition has actually mated with the lioness and the other hasn't. And the other has ended up killing the cubs because he knows that those aren't his cubs. So they do need to be cautious of male lions around their cubs as well. It's always amazing to sit this close to a male lion. It seems so peaceful when you feel quite safe in your vehicle. When we tell you coming across one of these on foot, you realize how incredibly big they are and how much more powerful than you they are. Luckily, lions are very, what's the word? Obliging. And they'll let you know that they're there. So they'll give you a good growl saying, listen, I'm here. And then all you need to do is back away, so you're not in a huge amount of danger. I remember when I started game ranging, they said, when we go looking for lions, we'll do an area, and if there's tracks going into a block between the roads, and there's no tracks coming out, you get off on foot and you go looking for them. And I thought, what? That sounds bizarre. How can anyone do that? Surely that's not safe. But as you do it more and more and you get comfortable in the bush, you realize that as long as you know what you're doing, animals are actually always, they don't want to have conflict with you any more than you want to have conflict with them. So they give you plenty of warning signs, and as long as you heed those warning signs, you're absolutely fine. It's so sweet to see these two lying. So very peaceful. Not a care in the world. Dara, if you have a look on this mane itself, you can see it's not 100% clean. There are bits of things that have gotten tangled in it. So, you know, they always look really well groomed. There will always be things that they can't get out of their mane that will fall out over time. They do groom each other, and they groom the bottom bits of the mane wherever they can, as often as they can, but they can't groom the whole thing. So you actually see that their tongues have a very rough tongue. It's almost as if sandpaper, so it'll glide through nicely, collecting any bits that have collected in their mane. But sure, I think like anyone, it will look fairly decent, but there's definitely things that they will struggle to get out that'll just fall out naturally. But the best they can do is just groom the parts where they can with their tongue. I've lost my call. So quite interesting. If you look at his mane though, it is actually in pretty good condition. Both of them have really nice clean manes. They've got a really beautiful color to their manes as well. You can see how dark it is at the bottom, very dark in color, and then you can see that golden blonde coming out at the top. When we first got these males, their manes were completely blonde. They've gotten darker as they've been here over a period of time. Really stunning coats on them at the moment. Also our coalition up in the north have very similar sort of coloured mane, although I think their manes are slightly less dark in colour. Just a little bit less dark in colour. Oh. You can actually see now that one's laid down, that the hair closer to the throat, where you more often see the lion's grooming, does seem to be a little bit more smooth in texture. The one at the back seems to be a lot more coarse. So perhaps that is from just more regular grooming that happens. Could also be just the fur itself is a bit softer there. You can really see that scar quite nicely along the eye. You can see it's actually almost uncomfortable the way he scrunched up his face. You can imagine how close that male came to losing his eye. When that injury happened, for quite a long time, we were quite convinced he had lost his eye. You can see lots of scars on his nose as well. All again, the very definite sort of small but defined lines that you know come from claw marks. You can also notice his nose is very black in color, the one at the back. And this nose in the front is actually a lot more pink in color. That's one of the things we used to age cats. It used to be the accepted method on how to age them more accurately. Pink noses were younger. They're supposed to change to black noses at about 7. That was accepted for a while, but there's been a recent study on aging leopards. It was very interesting. It looked at the few different methods that you would use. One was the amount of scars on the face, one was the formation of the dewlap, one was the pinkness of the nose, and the other was ear condition. And the pinkness of the nose seemed to be actually the least accurate, and ear condition was the most accurate, as they lose condition in their ears as they grow older, which is actually something that passes on to a lot of species. You can use ear condition in most species to age them. But I think these males are going to stay here for the rest of the afternoon, so we are going to leave them in peace and see what else we can find.
As you can see, Tingana is now standing up, and it's because there was an impala that let out 2 shouts all of a sudden right here, and it can't be for him. There's no ways the impalas that are shouting are seeing him, and look at how alert he is himself. I wonder, maybe there's somebody else around, or maybe just with the wind and the way it's swirling and how heavily it's blowing, that scent is blowing towards that impala, and the impala is getting a little bit twitchy and kind of alarm calling. But you can see how quickly he woke up. The problem is that I think he's going to walk straight into this block, because the impala is alarm calling inside the block, not kind of on the road area. What's wrong, Tingy? Is there somebody else around? It's just incredible to see how he went from sleeping to alert in like 1 second. He's just bolted upright and is looking, and there we go. Off he goes in the wrong direction, I'm afraid. Let's see, maybe we can try and find where this impala actually is. Kind of got his nose down. Are you going to sit there rather? He's gotten himself into thicker cover. I wonder if that's in preparation for, if that impala moves in this direction, that he's less conspicuous, and it's easier for him to then be able to go flat and the impala to kind of approach where he is. It might be the case. It might be why he's putting himself in that area. Do you see he's up again? Maybe he can see it. I'll just get my binos out quickly. Maybe I can spot this impala through the thickets. The grass is so long in the direction that he's staring that even if there was an impala in some of those areas, I don't think you'd even see it. But I can't see anything. Even horns or sign of movement. There's nothing. It was interesting though, the impala wasn't shouting as though it had definitely seen something. It was more of a shout of, let me move a little bit because it's gone around that bush. It was more of a shout of, I've smelled something, or there's something close by, I don't really know what it is. We saw it yesterday with Inzutini. It was exactly the same, is that she was there and the impalas kind of knew something was up, but they didn't really know where. And so they were kind of like snorting, but half-heartedly, if that makes sense. Just trying to see if I can pick him up, but there he is. He's just parallel with us. Oh, that's beautiful, looking at those rosettes going through this green grass. It's as good as one could ask for. He's just stopped behind a little bush there at the base of that termite mound. I'm hoping he's going to go actually up onto the mound itself and give us a really nice view of him. It's difficult though, because you can hardly see his coat. You can just make out the spots behind that bush. Lee, you say he's so well camouflaged. It's amazing, isn't it? You would think a bright sort of orangey black coat wouldn't really blend in this green environment that we're in right now. In winter, yes, but in summer, not so much. But you can see how a disruptive pattern blends in an environment like this. It's amazing how quickly those spots help to just break your eye and make it difficult to make him out. He's just kind of emerging there. And that's exactly why they like that. It's designed for him to become as elusive as possible. And so when he's stalking or when he's moving around and looking for prey animals, that it's very difficult for them to see him. See those shoulder blades? So amazing. All right, we're going to follow him. We'll see what he does. Hopefully he'll lead us towards where that impala is shouting.
For the month of January 2021, we are offering a chance to win a unique WildEarth expedition to the magnificent Tswalu Kalahari. From the ancient Kortai's Koranenberg Mountains to the southern Kalahari's red sand dunes, Tswalu offers what travelers crave most: space and time. The winner will explore this landscape in a vehicle, on foot, or on horseback, with a chance to go behind the scenes with WildEarth and of course meet the meerkats. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend at the luxury Motse Lodge, including flights from either Johannesburg or Cape Town. Open to all WildEarth explorers who have signed up before the end of January 2021. Terms and conditions apply.
My name is Ross and I'm a field guide at andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. I love getting questions from guests on WildEarth because I love sharing and learning information about nature with new people, and it also makes me feel like you're all joining me in real life. If you want to ask a question on WildEarth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit your question below our live feed.
Have you been watching WildEarth and dreamt of being right there on safari with one of the guides? Well, now you can. WildEarth is offering you a chance to buy a ticket to dream. You or a friend can hop on board a live WildEarth show and join our guide on safari. The ticket is redeemable at any of our locations, anytime in the future. Only a limited number of tickets are available, so don't wait. Get your ticket now and start dreaming. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to First Rock on Tortured, everybody, where we are going to be breaking down Medicinal Mondays of the African weeping wattle. And if you've never joined us before on this, basically, I was discussing it before that I've harvested a plant and I'm going to be breaking it down into some medicinal properties through different types of teas and extracts. We'll be doing that in the first segment, talk about the tree a bit, and then when you go away, while everything's sort of doing its thing, you'll come back again, and then I'll be forced to drink it. Very lovely. Okay, so first of all, I've got some water boiling over here, and we're going to make ourselves a bit of an infusion. Now, an infusion is essentially a tea, so putting anything into hot water and letting it steep. So I've gotten some bark here, lots of bark. I've got some pods, and I've got the leaves. We'll talk more about that as we go along, but let's just go and make ourselves a nice infusion. So I've got hot water. It's boiling over here. I'm going to put that on the side, and I'm just going to throw some bark in there and let it just steep, shall we? Just let it steep, do its thing, and we'll come back to that in a little while. Move it to the side, and then we want to make a decoction. Now, what is a decoction versus a infusion? Infusion is a tea. Decoction is you actively boil the ingredients to get the active ingredient out. So this water has been boiling already. Let's just zoom it up there, and we're going to throw a lot more of our bark into there. This is freshly harvested bark, of course, everybody. So some people might recommend bark that sits for a little while, it's dried a bit. Obviously, I'm not the expert on the actual product end of the day, but don't try this at home. We're just going to show you what the difference between the infusion will be, as well as the let me just use my tooth here to stir it up. Oh no. Is it possible that my gas bottle is going to die on me now? But as any prepared Boy Scout, I have got a second gas bottle. So let's quickly just get that out. That gas bottle has been on the way out for a little bit. This is hot. Sorry about that. I remember a lecturer of mine telling me years ago that, you know, a student was prepared, at least back in the days, with slides. Do any of you remember slides? And he actually had an extra bulb when the slide projector died. So now that is called preparation. Ow, ow, ow. Okay, so sorry about that. This is live and interactive, and we'd love to hear any questions you might have. There we go. Now we're going to blitz this. the decoction. Decoction is essentially, I'm going to boil that for about 8 to 10 minutes to get the active ingredient out while that one steeps. Okay, so now the wood, you can see the wood here, it's quite a yellowy, just turn that down slightly, quite a yellowy wood, very sweet. It's not very hard, but in larger stems it'll be much harder. People used to use it for axe handles, utensils, somehow even made buckets out of it, and it has been used as fuel. So it will burn, not the best wood in the world for burning, but it has been used for fuel. So very, very nice, and with that, Marcel, I could probably give you a proper little smack over there. Okay, one thing that it's also very popular for is you have a look at the leaves over here, a little bucket of leaves over here. This is also known as the poor man's toilet paper. It's very soft and very frizzly. You could very easily use this in the bush for wiping the nether regions after utilizing the bush. Make sure you get a nice big clump of it though, otherwise. And then it's nice and organic, and you throw it back in the bush, it decomposes. So isn't that fantastic? I think that's great, and also works very well as a nice fly swatter. Keeps the flies away. Just bear in mind, everybody, you don't confuse this with the sickle bush. Sickle bush looks quite similar, but there's very sharp spines that come out. So if you can stick your face in this bush, then it's not a sickle bush. Good to know. Okay, we've kept a little bit of bark over here while we allow our decoction to boil. And the bark has been used in the past as to chew it. So you could chew the bark as a diaphoretic, which means it will induce perspiration to help to bring fever into the body, to help you eliminate any sort of ailment that you might have. Colds, fever, mouth ulcers. It's really not pleasant, I'll be honest with you. Mouth sores, and after chewing it, you could also apply it to a wound. That's not great. RJ, you want to know what could be a substitute for boiling water without a pot? There's probably a few things we could use. Gourds, there's certain gourds out in the wilderness you can use. The calabash, wild monkey orange, potentially we could use that. You'd need the flame, but thankfully I've always got my very handy little pot over here. But not having a pot out here would be pretty tricky to try and boil something. But I'm sure there are ways and means around it. I don't have anything else with me. I've got a couple of pots which are very handy. But so through the tree here, we've got medicinal properties that we're going to deal with through the infusion as well as the decoction. And many of the medicinal values are in the roots as well. The roots and the bark have got that sort of cambium layer, which is around the tree where a lot of the medicinal plants, a lot of the medicine, okay, you're boiling. A lot of the medicine is found in the bark and the roots, and the trees adapted to fire take their nutrients and their medicine into the roots and the soil. That's why we find elephants destroy these trees. They've obviously got lots of ailments they're trying to sort of alleviate, and I haven't harvested any bark because harvesting bark on a tree is quite unsustainable. So pushing a tree over, digging up the roots, it's not the most sustainable way of harvesting. So I normally stick with roots. The most sustainable method of harvesting a plant is the pods, then the leaves, then the bark, and then the roots. But if you are going to harvest bark, I often will take an entire branch off of a tree sustainably. If it is a big tree, then best practice is to cut very thin little slivers of bark so that the tree itself can grow back onto those areas, because the purpose of the bark is not just to provide medicine for animals, it's to provide protection against insects, against fire, and against desiccation with regards to heat loss and water loss. So by damaging a tree just so that you can get your body to feel a bit better, ideally needs to be sustainable. So best practice should be followed. Around the world, especially in Africa, trees are being harvested willy-nilly. People are just tearing the bark off the tree. What that does is it causes a ring barking effect, and then that tree dies. So not ideal.
Welcome back. So our sleepy lions became non-sleepy lions very quickly, and there was some Ngala that walked past by a mud wallow He very quickly got up and tried to chase them as they walked towards the drainage line. He managed to miss them, unfortunately, because he didn't put his full effort. Now he's come across a tree that this male is quite interested in. There's some sort of scent that he's picking up. I don't know if it's the scent mark of one of the lionesses in his pride. But he certainly is very interested in what's going on around here. In a sense. He seems to be walking back that side now. Maybe back towards his brother. His brother gave a very half-hearted attempt to try and assist him. When I say half-hearted, he picked his head up as this one decided to run towards the Ngala. One of the Nyalas actually panicked and ran straight towards the brother, who almost just looked at her, and then she darted off into the bush. I'm going to reverse a little bit and get us a bit of a better view. He's walking out really nicely into the open now. They're busy hunting the Ngala.
Alrighty guys, so we unfortunately didn't have any luck with the meerkats this morning. We were at the burrow where they went down last night, but it would seem like they had a very productive day yesterday. So taking quite some time to wake up. So we decided we'll rather come back tomorrow morning and have a look if they're doing anything there. We are back in the area where we left the cheetahs earlier, just trying to find them quickly. Don't know if they moved or so on. Tried to get a hold of Kyle, but I think he might have sat with him for a little while longer, and his radio actually powered down on the vehicle, so I couldn't contact him now. But yeah, they are around. We've actually picked up on some leopard tracks from during the evening just now. It doesn't look super fresh, but we'll have a look and see. Maybe we get lucky and we see a sign of one of them around. But yeah, like I said, we're back in the area of the cheetahs and just trying to see if we can see whether they went in a direction or not. This leopard was busy here. Coming down again like this. Don't know if you guys can make out. Let me just do this quickly. So if you have a look, there was a hyena walking over here, but here you can see the leopard track, female leopard track. So here you can see the female leopard track coming into the water like this, and there was some hyenas that came in and out again as well. So yeah, potential. Well, I mean, she moved down like this, so we might get lucky. We'll just have a look and see if we can find the cheetah tracks as well, and see which direction they went into, and if we get lucky, maybe we get both the spotted large cats in the last little bit of this drive. But I'm not seeing any activity of them coming over this road though, so with that being the case, they might have gone down this way. Tyler, so our leopard population is not large at all, actually very small. They estimate about 7 adult leopards over the entire Tswalu. So with that being the case, I mean, that's super small, considering that if you are in the Sabi sands, they talk about close to 200 leopards, and the reserve is 40,000 hectares smaller than what Tswalu is. So yeah, Very, very small leopard population, but as you can imagine, okay, this year is a good rainy year, but as you can imagine with the normal drier conditions out in the Kalahari, the animals' territories have to be much, much larger to be able to facilitate their needs, you know, not only den sites but also the availability of food and water, hunting opportunities and those types of things. So with that being the case, we don't see leopards often, so when we do see them it's quite a treat. And actually the last leopard I saw was about 2 weeks ago. But that was only my 5th sighting of a leopard since I've been at Tswalu, so over more than a year. So you can imagine how I'm missing it coming from the Sabi sands. But it's always special to every now and again see them and be able to enjoy their specialness, especially out here in the Kalahari. You know, it's not a sighting that you bank on often. So with that being the case, we really do appreciate when we see them. So that we know of, about 5, maybe 6 females in the area, and then 1 big male, but a monster of a male. The trackers say that sometimes when they see the track of that male leopard, it seems like at first glance a female lion that's walking around. But yeah, guys, we're gonna have a look if we can find these cats, either the cheetahs or the leopard. For the meantime, we're going to send you over to Kim with some action, okay?
So welcome back. That was unbelievably exciting. As we thought everything was settling down, we suddenly turn around and both male lions are chasing a whole group of Ngala, a mother and a young lamb. They then ran off into the bush, and we actually saw him come back towards us. One of the males managed to grab the young Ngala lamb. I think this is the male that's got the Ngala lamb in the bush off to our left. I haven't actually seen it yet. It might be the brother. We did hear sort of a snarl earlier and some crunching bones, so certainly somewhere around here is the male with the carcass. Yes, it is. I think I see a gleam of the Ngala. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my binoculars up. Everything's all tangled in the mess that was racing through the bush to try and see this occurring. You can see that Ngala just lying in between those 2 paws of that male lion. You can see him panting as well. He's exerted quite a bit of energy trying to catch that Ngala lamb. Okay, must I move forward a little bit? Sure. Sorry, everyone. We're just going to reposition a little bit here, just so you can all get a view of what we're seeing now. Keep going. Good there. Okay. Alrighty. Everyone see that now? Fantastic. What's amazing is that it's the male without the scar in his eye. So this is the well-fed male that's managed to grab this young Ngala lamb. And the one who hasn't fed still is going without. So it's quite an interesting show of the the understanding between the males. Even though this one is quite well fed, he's not going to share at all with his brother. He's going to keep this all to himself. Although in fairness to him, I suppose it's more like a little snack, you know, a light chicken wing for something like a lion of this size. You can actually see drool dripping down. Priscilla, when we talk about success rate, you know, you can read lots of different articles on success rate, and this book publishes this and this. It's going to vary with the pride of lion. It's going to vary in in the area. It's going to vary for the time of the year. So to give an actual success rate is just a bit misleading. I do think that the success rate is lower than other animals like cheetah or wild dog, because lion are very, very opportunistic. So it depends also on what you count as a hunt, you know. So a lot of the time they give a half-hearted attempt. Sort of they'll stalk and they'll try, but you can see they're not putting in their entire effort, and then they give up when they've decided the animal's too far. So very difficult to say exactly what the exact percentage is, but I would say it's less than 50% though, far a bit less than 50%. But yeah, they are quite efficient because they hunt in a pride. So while they're very opportunistic, so sometimes they take opportunities that perhaps aren't the best, they also do have the added advantage of you can see he's got a bit of hay fever going on here. So they have the added advantage of hunting in a pride. You can see how possessive he is over this carcass. Just look at his stature. You can see he's actually got his paw right over that carcass. He's leaning over it, and he's not giving this up for anything. And I think his brother knows that, so his brother's not even close by. I can't see any view of his brother. I think what he did is he found a nice patch around here to lie down in, and that's where he is at the moment. So this just goes to show the amount of times you sit with sleepy lion and you go, this is what they're going to do for the afternoon. You know, most of the time you'll be right, but we always forget they are very, very opportunistic. So even a fat lion like the one that we're watching now, fat big male lion, managed to make a kill in the heat of the day. And he went from fast asleep to not even assisting with the first attempt to seeing an opportunity. I think what happened was the herd of Ngala, from when the first male ran off to try and hunt them, got split up. And I think that one female with her lamb actually came back to try and see where the rest of the herd had gone. And that's where it went very wrong for them. They were very much in the wrong place, the wrong time. They got right in between the two males. And too late they realized what had happened. And that's when the males gave it their absolute all. So we are going to sit and see if this male starts to feed on this carcass anytime soon. But in the meantime, we're going to send you over to Mole, who's found his spot again.
Alrighty guys, so we actually just missed the chase. So we went around the dam, had a look, and Veronique, our meerkat habituator, came to the rescue again, said she had them. And as we were pulling into the sighting, these two boys just chased an oryx, a female with a youngster. They unfortunately didn't see the youngster though, so they went for the female and missed. But this was now maybe 2 minutes ago. And it's amazing how quickly they just decide, now we need to rest again. So back down, taking it easy. There's a blue wildebeest now calling like crazy because he all of a sudden realized there's cheetahs in the area. So he's going to tell everyone that there's something around here. So I'm pretty sure they're going to take a bit of a breather, let the blue wildebeest relax, and then allow the animals, the rest of maybe some springbok or some oryx or something like that, to come back into the waterhole. They're situated perfectly at the moment. Nice in an open area. I know they're in the shade now, but nice in an open area where they can devise a plan, not too far away from the water. And it is at that time of the morning now where you'll find quite a bit of the general game coming in to have a drink. Just about heating up now. You can see the one is still keeping an eye out for something coming closer. I mean, they are hungry, so they are going to want to hunt. So with that being the case, we might get lucky. We've got some time left, so hopefully the general game will move into the area and we'll get a little bit of action from these guys. But yeah, it wasn't a very long chase, maybe about 80 meters that they went before they decided, no, they're going to rather give up. You know, with these animals, the predators, they have to be absolutely sure that they have a very good chance of taking down something to continue in a chase, especially something like a cheetah. You know, they exert quite a bit of energy when they run at those great speeds. So if it's not a successful chase, that's energy that's lost and they can't get it back. So I think they'll take some time now, just rest a little bit and hope for something to come in. Jackie, so it depends on the specific individual. What we do see is with the females, the moms with the small cubs, they often go for things like steenbok and scrub hares and those types of things, you know, smaller animals, so that they can feed and get back to their cubs to, you know, nurse them. The bigger the cubs get, the more they start focusing on things like springbok, and then if the cubs are at that point where they are eating like worms, you'll find that they go over to red hartebeest or kudus or you know, female kudus or those types of things. These two boys, they are generally focused on red hartebeest, female kudus, and then young oryx. They have been seen taking down something as large as an adult male oryx, which was quite the spectacular scene. I didn't see it myself, but I saw photos and videos of it, and it was incredible. But typically speaking, that's a little bit large for them and dangerous, as you can imagine, with the oryx having those long spear-like horns and being quite powerful and very agile with their horns. It is always a threat for the cheetah to go for something like that. So they'll rather go for something without horns, like an adult female kudu, which may be larger in size than the gemsbok or the oryx, but a lot less dangerous. So yeah, but what we find them on most often is probably female kudu and red hartebeest for these two boys. But it, like I said, it will depend on the different individuals. Some like springbok, some like impala. Each one has his own little taste and comfort zone as to what they are able to take down. There's a female cheetah here that's got 2 cubs. They're quite large already. She started with 5, but unfortunately 3 of them didn't make it. But she quite regularly goes for female kudu and impala. She loves the impalas though. Uses the mountain to link to stop them from getting away. But yeah, guys, we're going to stay with them for a little bit, see if there's something coming in. For the meantime, we're going to send you over to another location.
Yeah, so we've got a group of impalas who have decided to rest out in some open plains, and the reason for them settling down in this area is for exactly what Moritz was talking about now, is they wanting to make sure that they'll be able to spot a predator coming from a distance. And so now that it's getting hot, instead of trying to seek refuge into the shade, they've decided to stick out into the open areas where hopefully if there is a predator like a cheetah lurking around, they'll be able to spot it before it's too late. And see, all of them in this little group have got horns, and the majority of them, especially the small group, have got those horns that are pretty much pointing in towards one another. And so they are a group of youngsters, and over to the left-hand side is a much bigger male, the typical adult horn structure that you see with impalas. And so they're grouping together just to make sure they've got more eyes and ears, much easier for them to spot something. And then there's actually a group of females that is a bit further away up the airstrip. And see them there doing pretty much exactly the same thing. It's quite interesting how they didn't decide to just join them, but at this time of year, it's very typical that we see the group of females with the youngsters, and then the males are around, but they're always slightly separate. It's not going to be too long now until we enter the rutting season, which should happen within the next 2.5 months or so. And we'll see a completely different dynamic with impalas at that stage. So Kevin, we see them quite regularly, actually, the bachelor herds of impalas, and it's their structure at this time of year. Like I was saying, there's no females that are coming into estrus, so there's no need to compete against one another, and so they'll join forces like this to try and keep themselves as safe as possible. But like I was saying a bit earlier, in about 2.5-3 months time, with the females coming back into estrus, that triggers the males going into the rut. And that's when we'll see males that are a lot more solitary. So they'll try and hold a temporary territory for as long as they can, and they'll do anything to keep other males away from it. And so they're just wanting to try and hold females within their little spot for as long as they possibly can, and so that they get the mating rights. And so at this time of year, you can see all of them, especially, not anymore, but that male on the left-hand side, the big one, was chewing and just ruminating. So what he is trying to do at the moment is he's just trying to fill up and remain as healthy and as strong as possible. So they're trying to gain weight. Obviously, the bigger they are, the more likely they are to chase other impalas away. And so he's trying to just conserve energy and just try and get it nice and big before he starts competing for females, because when he does so, that's pretty much the only thing that's on his mind, and he just wants to chase other males and mate with females. And it's very impressive horn. So if he's hanging around this area, this will be a very good spot for him to set up his temporary territory to attract the females in towards. And he'll have to use those horns quite aggressively with other males because this is quite a prime spot. And so he'll have lots of competition when the time comes. And so doing what he's doing now is resting and eating when he gets the chance is exactly what he needs to be doing. And these impalas seem to be quite settled in for the day. As it's warming up,
Alrighty guys, so if you've ever seen an upset blue wildebeest in your life, that's what they look like. This boy has now, well not now, but when the cheetahs made the chase for that oryx, he realized that there's two male cheetahs around, and he is not at that point where he's going to lose sight of them. So he's standing there just staring at them, constantly calling every now and again, to let everyone know, especially the cheetahs, that he's seeing them. So often you'll find that the herbivores will rather give away their position than to hide when they spot a predator. You know, it makes sense for them to tell the predator that they know they are there, just so that the predator also doesn't think he might have a chance. You know, when the blue wildebeest calls like that, the cheetahs know that he's seeing them, and he's not going to allow them to get close enough to try and make a charge also. So you'll quite often have them do that, even before the predators has maybe spotted the cheetahs, or if it's impalas with a leopard or those types of things. They're more telling the predator that they know that they are around than warning off anyone else, which makes a lot more sense for them. So yeah, as you can see, the cheetahs are very relaxed at the moment. They're not even thinking about going for the blue wildebeest currently, which makes sense because that wildebeest is in any way a little bit big for them. So we're going to stick with them for a little bit, see if there's something else coming in. If there's something that happens, we'll let you know, okay?
So we've got a sleepy lion again. What he did is he actually turned around and managed to scrape away a lot of the leaf litter. So he's got some nice clear soil that he's lying on now. Nice cool soil lying under all that leaf litter. And he seems to be using that Ngala lamb as a bit of a pillow. It's lying right next to it. It just shows how greedy sometimes lions can be. You know, he's so full that he's not even interested in eating this Ngala lamb. He's rather taking a nap. Maybe after his nap he'll feel a bit peckish and he'll feed on it then. But for right now he seems to have found himself a comfy spot. And he's quite happy. He's got his Ngala lamb right next to him. It's nice and safe. Nothing's going to take it from him. Don't think anything would be brave enough to try and steal something like that right from in front of a male lion like this. And he's going to have a little nap. Miley, thanks for your question. I think it's such an instinctual thing with lions that if they see an opportunity, they'll take it, even when they're full or even when they have a carcass at the same time. So what happened here was the other brother actually took the initiative and he did all the hard work. You know, he was the hungry one and he went and chased off all the Ngala, and as they started running past this one, I think the second male couldn't resist that instinct to hunt and chase when something's running. Just took over him and he then chased afterwards, and I think the mother Ngala and the lamb turned probably in a direction that favored him as opposed to his brother, and he managed to snatch this young lamb. You can see how he is quite aware with that wind. He's got his head up. He'll be a little bit more alert, feeling like his brother might try and come and take this carcass from him. And yeah, so I think it was just such an instinctual thing for him that he couldn't even help himself. And that's why they always say, when you come across predators on foot or whatever, don't run. And this is the exact reason why. Like, they will chase then. So, a very, very instinctual thing. But he got a nice snack from it. This Ngala is actually very lucky that he wasn't particularly hungry today, because sometimes when a carcass is this small, it's going to sound very brutal, and I'm very sorry for any viewers that are a bit sensitive. Maybe cover your ears, but they don't always bother with killing the animal first. So something small like this, even a small warthog, they'll sometimes just feed on it while it's still alive. They won't bother killing it because they know they've got so much strength, it won't be able to fight back.
Just spotted the other male.
Oh, where's the other male?
Straight across here into the bush.
Oh, Glenn's just told me he spotted the other male. I think that's what alerted this one here. Dolly, no, he won't. I saw his tail there.
Between those two trunks coming up. I can see it good on my side here.
Yeah, Dolly, something as small as this, he wouldn't. Lions are incredibly protective over their kills. And you know, maybe if it was a large enough carcass where they could both feed quite happily, and they wouldn't be very close to each other, then they would share. Something like a buffalo carcass, giraffe, even maybe a large zebra or wildebeest, they would share. But something as small as this, even though this one's full, he's not going to be sharing it with his brother. I'm just trying to see where his brother is at the moment. Yeah, I think my angle's a bit tough now. He's doing exactly what we thought he was doing. He's also stuck close to his brother, found a patch of shade somewhere here, and is just lying down. Oh, there we go, I've got him. Phew, he blends in so well. Yeah, he's lying down as well. AC, thanks for your comment. He will indeed. You know, these male lions are very strong and very efficient hunters, and more than likely later on in this evening he might actually join up with one of the prides. You never know. I think once they're together, they've done their territorial patrol, so I think they're going to go looking for one of the prides this side and make sure that no other males have taken over their prides. So I think what might happen is this is going to be a knock-on effect. I think the other male might steal a kill from that lioness should she have a successful hunt this evening. And maybe not even steal, just feed first until he's full and he's content, and then he'll leave the rest. That's saying if there's enough to go around. So I think what we will do is we will stay here for a little bit longer. But in the meantime, we're going to send you over to Mole, who's got cheetah that are also looking to get a meal.
Alrighty guys, so yeah, I mean these cheetahs are very flat at the moment, but they are constantly looking out. They are hungry, so if there's something that comes down to the waterhole, they are definitely going to try something. I'm pretty sure of that. The wind is perfect for them for something that comes to the water, except for if it's coming from where we are sitting, because then they'll smell them. But anything coming from the south or the west will be able to come into the water without knowing of these cheetahs. The blue wildebeest is now also relaxed. He's not calling anymore, which is great because that means the animals coming in won't know that there's something going on at or around the waterhole. You can see how that one guy's ears are constantly up and checking and, you know, just scanning. So hopefully before 9 o'clock there will be something that comes in and they'll try again, and hopefully we'll be able to get that on screen this time. Douglas, yes, the cheetahs with the males and the females, you'll find that sometimes females can almost be faster. You know, I've seen that not necessarily with cheetahs, but with lions. There's a definite speed difference when you go between females and males. The females are much more agile, much faster than the males, but you know, the males don't, specific to lions now, the males don't need as much speed because they've got the power. They can go for things like buffalo and so on. But with the cheetahs being both small, they are just as fast. You'll find certain individuals that are faster and certain that are slightly slower, you know, just like in humans, how some can run super fast, others not at all. It's just a genetics thing, but typically speaking, with a cheetah, it doesn't matter about the gender. They're fast enough either way. So for something like a female, it would make sense for them to be almost faster than a male cheetah, because you know the males, again, they can, just like with lions, use their power to take down larger prey, which means, you know, the larger the prey animal, most likely the slower it will be. So they don't necessarily need as much speed, they need more power. Whereas with something like a female being slightly smaller, she'll need more speed because she'll have to go for things like springbok and steenbok, you know, those types of things. The smaller the animal, well, to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, if you go down to the size of a mouse, that's going to be something different. Then you can't be as fast as a cheetah anymore. But anything larger than a steenbok, smaller than, I want to say, a Ngala, so Impala, Springbok range, they're going to be much faster than something like an oryx, just because they need to be. You know, with them not having as much muscle, they need more speed and agility. So you'll find the female cheetahs being more agile as well. LT, so they can continue, typically they can continue in a chase for up to about 400 meters, which, as you can imagine, with a cheetah goes past very quickly. But anything farther than that will cause in them starting to overheat. And if they don't stop the chase then, especially in temperatures like we can have around Tswalu during summertime, you know, late February, we quite often go over 40 degrees Celsius, sometimes even into the late 40s, 48, 49 degrees Celsius. So as you can imagine, if that is the maximum temperature during the day, at this point of the day, you'll find the temperature already being well over 35 degrees Celsius. So with that being the case, they'll overheat even faster, so that distance will maybe become a little shorter, which is quite important for them to then stop, because if they overheat too much, they can be running at that, let's say, 80 kilometers an hour or 90 or 100 and pass out while they run. And I mean, you can imagine how hard the fall is going to be when you're running at 100 kilometers an hour and all of a sudden you're unconscious. So very important for them to not continue in a chase for too long. They are, however, able to continue in a chase much longer than, let's say, a leopard at full speed. Something like a lion, funny enough, they can, if they hunt buffalo and those types of things, they can continue in the hunt for longer, just because, you know, with a buffalo, they don't necessarily have to run at full speed to get to them. They can sometimes trot behind them, and then it's more a chase game than a chase than anything else. But yeah, typically speaking, around 400 meters, so a quarter mile for a cheetah to be able to run at full speed in a chase before they have to stop. That's the general average that we work on, or that they work on. If anything further than that becomes dangerous for them. So yeah, guys, for the time being, we're going to remain with these cheetahs, see if there's something coming down to the water. They are constantly scanning, but while we're waiting, we're going to send you over to Kim with her lions, okay?
Thanks very much, Mo. So with lions, when you're talking about how long cheetah take to, or how long they can hunt for and chase for. Very different with lions. So lions don't tend to chase over very long distances at all. You know, they've got short spurts of energy, and they're able to cover a couple 100 meters maybe. And that's pretty much it. After that stage, they'll give up. The time it takes for them to hunt is also varied. You know, here was very quick. This was all over within 10 minutes maybe. And sometimes they can actually take quite long. I've sat with lions that have been stalking for well over an hour. And the reason they would do something like that is limited cover or waiting for the right opportunity. So if animals are walking towards them, then maybe they'll rather sit and wait for the animal to get closer than give their position away too soon. Also, with limited cover, they have to move very slowly and very carefully, because animals are very much tuned into movement as opposed to actually spotting the predators themselves. So exactly what we saw this time. The male lions were lying there doing nothing. And, sorry, I'm just trying to reconnect onto this call. Excuse the phone. So in this case, these lions were... Sorry, 1 second. They were lying down and watching these animals, and they weren't moving, but they weren't covered by anything. You know, they were very much out in the open. None of the Ngala noticed them whatsoever. And the male actually waited for them all to cross out the open area into the thicket, and then he ran where he knew he had a bit of cover now. And once he did that, ironically, once he had the best cover, they actually noticed him then because of the movement and the sound. So they'll actually try and limit their movement, especially when the animals are looking at them as much as possible. So that's the difference there. You can see he is quite hot. It is really starting to heat up, even though he's got a nice shady patch there. Lauren, thanks for your question. And it would depend on how much energy they spent. They don't have to rest like cheetah have to, though. Cheetah often have to wait about half an hour for their heart rate to sort of balance out and their breathing to go back to normal, but it's because cheetahs expend a huge amount of energy. And also cheetahs are taking that time to check for any predators around. So, they know that the alarm calls of something and that disturbance might actually draw something like a lion or a leopard into the area, because lion and leopard know that they can steal kills from other animals. Much easier for them to steal a kill from a cheetah. All they have to do is walk up to it and then they have a new kill, than it is for them to actually hunt something by themselves. So it's also a strategic move on a cheetah's part to wait. Lions very often actually start eating straight away, as I was saying before. Sometimes they don't even waste time to properly kill the animal once they've caught it. I've witnessed them tearing it apart while it's still alive. And that strategy is because when they hunt in a pride or when they hunt with male lions, often there's a bit of competition over that carcass. It's amazing how they will work together right to the point where they've caught the animal, and then it's all bets are off. Then it's every lion for themselves. And so they often start feeding straight away on whatever part they can, so that they can at least get some meat before one of them decides to sort of out-intimidate the others or to pull the carcass away and snarl out the rest, so they feed first. There's always a very definite hierarchy in a pride of lion on which ones feed first, and it goes males and then the dominant females, which often will make sure that their cubs feed first, then they feed, and then the rest of the pride. So it's in the interest of whatever lion's there to start feeding as quickly as possible. So quite the opposite to cheetah. So I think this male is probably going to stay here for the rest of the afternoon. We might give it another 10 minutes and see if he eventually starts feeding, but I think he might also end up lying down and sleeping until he's a bit more hungry. But in the meantime, Eric's managed to find you some cats as well, so let's see what he's got in store for you.
So coming to the waterholes definitely paid off for us. We've just managed to find these 4 lions that are lying on the dam wall at the moment. And Tessa beat us to it by maybe about a minute or so. So she got it just before we did, and she managed to find just these 4. And they are looking longingly at a huge herd of impala, wildebeest, and waterbuck, which is on the other side of the waterhole, so a bit out of their reach at the moment. And if we look especially closely at some of the lions that have got their heads up, especially this one closest to us, it's quite a nice example there, especially on the top of the head. And just see a little bit of mane that's starting to stick out, and then as he's got his chin down, you can see around the chest and the side of the face and the cheeks that mane starting to grow. And so this is a group of sub-adult lions, and I would have to imagine that it's part of the pride of lions that we see most of the time, so part of that Birmingham pride of lions. It's a bit unusual to see the 4 of them by themselves, and I wonder if they weren't separated at some point in the last couple of days from the main group, or they could just be resting in this area whilst the females have moved off to try and find something to hunt. They're at that age where they're almost, well, some of them are 2, some of them are almost 2.5 years old, so they should really be following the pride around and the adult females most of the time. But every now and again they still get left to their own devices. Let's see, that one's sleeping. And so we've got, it looks like it's that one there. She doesn't have any of the long facial hairs like that other male does. So she's a young female. So it looks like it's 2 females and 2 males that are here. And usually it's a group of 8 that are around. And so there should be another, what is it? I think another male and 3 other females that should be here. So a lion's mane, does he feels very, very, very coarse. At this age, you probably won't find that it's as coarse as it is when it's a male. But if you were to take those 2 male lions you've been watching at Phinda, that fur is so coarse that you can't run your fingers through it without your fingers stopping. And the reason for that is that it just acts as like a big cushion and a protective layer around the vulnerable parts of the throat and the back of the neck. And so when they are fighting, you can just imagine, I mean, it's potentially an animal that weighs close to 230 kilograms, so close to 500 pounds. And you can just imagine the force that they can create with the front paws. And if these male lions are fighting with one another, they smack each other with the paws, they bite each other. And so that mane is there to serve as a protective layer. It's quite similar to that old school coat of steel armor that you see on those knights back in the day. So it serves the same purpose. It's just to stop the brunt of the force of a blow or a bite. And I think it also, it helps as a way of being able to judge how big another lion is without having to.
Sorry about that. We seem to have lost Ngala. I'm sure you can understand that there's always a little bit of signal issues when you come out into the bush. One of the things I used to love about the bush, actually, is that there's no signal. You're completely removed from technology. But right now it seems to serve us well, as we can all share this beautiful sighting together. You can see we were right in saying this male's not interested in eating anytime soon. He seems to have a bit more discipline than I do, though. I know that if I've got a tasty treat sitting in the fridge, even after I've had a full meal, I might just indulge, especially with chocolate. That's my personal weakness. But he doesn't seem to have a weakness for Ngala lambs. He's just trying to find a nice comfy spot. Shame. So we were talking a bit earlier about how he needs to rest before you eat. You can see he is panting, but that's not from the exertion from the chase that he did. I think he actually ran very little, managed to catch it quite quickly, and obviously didn't have to use a lot of energy to drag this carcass around, as it's very small. So he's actually just panting because of the heat. He's got himself a nice cool area, but it's still a really, really hot day, and he's got that massive mane that is making it very difficult for him to cool himself down. So what you'll see is they'll often pant quite a bit with their mouth open. You can see the movement of the body, so he's definitely panting quite a bit now. And the reason they leave the mouth open is because the membranes in the mouth are very good at heat exchange. So as a breeze goes past those membranes, the tongue and the cheeks within the mouth, it cools the blood down there, and that cooler blood then circulates through the body. So you'll see the same sort of strategy with crocodiles. They'll also lie with their mouth open. I'm sure most of you, any of you who have dogs at home, whenever they're hot, or especially after they need to cool themselves down after a run, they keep their mouths open and they pant like that. So that's why they do that. You can see his ear moving ever so slightly as well. So it did strike me earlier. It's amazing at how quickly they can go from being fast asleep or, perceivably fast asleep to straight into action. And that is the great thing about lions. Is 90% of the time you do see them sleeping, but when they do move, they're always very, very exciting to watch. And we had a ball seeing them run around the vehicle, trying to follow them in this thick bush. Maria, thanks for your question. Generally, no. they wouldn't leave this carcass without feeding on it. There'd be no point, after doing all that energy to catch it. It's a great meal that they're going to have. They do often feed till bursting point, and then they'll leave. I've seen sometimes where lions have abandoned carcasses that have a fair amount of meat on them. In fact, these two males abandoned a giraffe carcass that they'd not even half finished. It wasn't even getting that rotten yet. They do actually feed on carcasses when they're very rotten, even with lots of maggots. But I think their priority was probably just elsewhere. I think they'd fed a fair amount, and they decided that they wanted to check up on the pride, or perhaps go for a drink of water, and from there maybe made another kill, or even went to check up on the pride. So they can leave carcasses with food. They generally don't. They generally stay with carcasses until they've fed whatever they can on it, and then they go off to see what else they can catch, or whatever other things they wanted to achieve with their day. But something like this, very unlikely that they would leave it. It's actually quite interesting. It's so peaceful here. And this is a great example of also how you find animals, because had we left when we were going to, which was a good, few minutes before all the action happened, which sometimes is Murphy's Law, these lions would have run off. And because it was a chase, it would be very difficult to identify the direction in which they went, because there were tracks going up and down and all around. So unless we managed to find the final sort of long leading tracks, so then we would be able to track them in here. Otherwise we would have to go off on foot and cover quite a bit of an area, and they are quite thick into the bush, so it might have been difficult for the other rangers to find them this afternoon. So luckily we managed to stay with them a bit longer. So I think we're going to sit here and just enjoy this until the end of the show. But in the meantime, we're going to send you over to Tristan to see what he's found.
We do have a very tall animal. This is a rather lanky giraffe. We've traded the spots of a leopard for the spots of a giraffe. Not that giraffe actually have spots. It's a terrible analogy, but anyway, I shall make sure that I beat myself with a wet fish across the face for making such a silly analogy. Anyway, we left Tingana for two reasons. One, because we had a slight technical issue and Marcel needed to get up onto Buffel's Hook, which meant we needed to come off. And two, because where he was sitting was about a 0.00001 out of 10 visual. It literally was just a spot in the thickest of thick grass. He didn't move too much more from when we last saw him, and he just flopped down in a little shady spot. So I think he's going to be in that area for the day, unless something comes his way, and he can then hunt it. So we've left him to have a little bit of a nap, and instead we're now with the giraffe. And this bull giraffe has been around. I saw him actually yesterday briefly kind of disappearing into a thicket, coming in this direction, and now he's in a state of rest. So basically he's just found himself a nice little shady spot underneath a marula tree, and you can see every now and then he is chewing. So he's ruminating and basically regurgitating balls of food that he's re-chewing, and while doing that is also kind of just resting. Giraffe have this knack of almost being half asleep while they do this, which is pretty cool. Sarah, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to try and see. I have a book that does this very nicely, and I don't know if I've got it with me. Let me just check if I do, because of all the rain and things, I took out some of the books that I sometimes carry with me. So just give me a chance. But essentially, we're telling male and female giraffe apart is actually fairly simple. One is that a male is much, much larger than a female. You'll find that a male giraffe stands about 1 meter taller than what a female does. So it's a long way up there. The second thing is that when you look on top of the head, you see that there is a horn-like structure, which is actually not a horn at all. It is just bone that is fused to the skull, called an ossicone. And those are thicker in the males and bald on top in males. Females have much thinner, narrower, underdeveloped ones that are very, very hairy. And that is probably the easiest way to be able to tell the difference between them. It's really kind of obvious when you see them side by side. There's some people that will tell you that you can tell by the color of the animal. That's not exactly correct. Males, while most times present as darker individuals, it's not always the case. You'll find that females can sometimes be dark as well, and it can be to do with genetics. But basically, here we go, is what I'm talking about, is the ossicones. This gives you a much better example, except that these are a little bit too thick on the female kind of side. So this is the male here. You see he's got very broad base. It goes up. The hair on top is kind of low down, and then there's this little bald, bony structure that comes out, whereas the female, the hair is over the top of the ossicone, and it is much narrower than what you see here. Now, I was saying to you earlier that it is bone that's fused to the skull, so if you look at the actual diagram, you see where it sits, it kind of fuses on top of the head over here. Interestingly enough, the other thing that you can tell male and female apart is you see there's this bump on the forehead of this particular diagram. In females, you won't see this. They don't get these bony deposits and calcification of the skull like a male does. The male's skull will constantly be depositing calcium, and it will start to become gnarled and big and lumpy on the forehead. And that's basically there to help when they start competing for mating rights. The more gnarled and bumpy the head is when they swing it with their neck, the more it hurts the other one, and the more they're able to dominate. And funnily enough, their skull can actually weigh double after they've reached maturity by the time they've kind of get much older. Even though the rest of the body is not growing, the skull itself will continue to have these bony deposits, and it will become heavier and heavier. And while we're on this, it's always just nice just to talk about the neck structure, because a nice little diagram of this. A lot of people wonder about the neck and how many bones and all those kinds of things. You can see that they have exactly the same as what we do. They have 7. They're just incredibly large vertebrae that come down. So you can see they start kind of at the shoulder, and then they are very elongated all the way up and then join to the skull on top. It's an amazing structure that a giraffe has. All right, we're going to probably leave our giraffe. We're going to try and see what else we can find. In the meantime, I'll send you across to Moritz and his sleepy cheetah.
All right, guys, so I think the batteries have now officially died on these cheetahs. It is getting very warm, though, so I don't think it will make sense for them to try and hunt anymore. But you never know. You know, I've seen a leopard in the middle of summer, in the middle of the day during Kruger, hunt when it's like 40 degrees Celsius. So when they're hungry, so there might always be a possibility of them trying something during the heat of the day. However, they need to look a little bit more awake for something to be noticed when there is something coming through. At the moment, they're quite flat. You only see a head popping up every now and again, and it's more Carl, so the cheetahs don't have fully retractable claws. They've got semi-retractable claws for one specific reason, and that's to have better grip when they're running. So just like a sprinter putting on a running shoe or those running spikes to have better grip for when they run at those great speeds, the cheetahs have that as well, to just be able to grip the ground a little bit better when they run at 100 kilometers an hour, or sometimes just lower than that. With them not being super powerful, they use their speed rather than their strength to, tackle or ankle tap the prey animal, and then when it's on the ground, they use their jaws to suffocate it. So they don't really use their claws as much when it comes to gripping and holding onto the prey. Don't get me wrong, those claws are still very sharp, even though it gets worn down quite a bit when they move through the sand, especially when running. But it's definitely not as sharp as something like a leopard or a lion. But they don't need it to be, because they use it for something totally different. The dew claw of a cheetah, however, the little thumb claw that's slightly up on the forearm, that is a little more sharp because it doesn't come into contact with the sand so much. But yeah, like I said, guys, not much happening here at the moment. They might try again this afternoon, so for the meantime, we're going to send you somewhere else.
How insane is that animal?
This is out of this world. Fantastic. Good, Mama.
Wow, what a way to start off. Just such an incredible privilege to be out here. It just keeps on delivering.
There you go, there you go. Heart is pumping right now.
3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Look at this, everybody. We've got a live kill.
The croc's holding the tail. It's holding tight. Lucky wildebeest. There's nowhere to go. This is a disaster in the making.
Something that I have never seen before in my entire life that you are now watching live.
My heart is in my mouth, everybody.
Look at this. It's gonna make it. It's going, it's going.
This is just too magical. Hi, little guys. That's great, isn't it?
Look at that. Scuba Steve has got a friend.
You've got a friend in me.
It couldn't be a better morning. This is just too special.
Oh my goodness, we've got a turtle.
How epic is this fact that we're coming to you live from the Chobe River? It's the most incredible feeling to be here. This is live and we're in Rwanda. This is a very, very different adventure, charged with emotion.
I did not think I would ever face my fears like this.
So, of course, the only thing that could actually wake this male from his slumber is his brother picking his head up and showing his brother that he's actually awake now. And I think this male's being quite protective of that tiny little chicken wing carcass that he's got. So I think he's just showing his brother that he's actually awake and alert, and don't even try coming here. You know, I'm very much on high alert and I will protect this carcass. That's the message that's being sent out here. All I can see of the brother is literally a corner of the mane. It's just poking out from behind the bush, and I suppose this is exactly why we always say the lionesses do more of the hunting. You know, one of the reasons is because the males are less camouflaged, and would this be a female, I would not see at all, because all you're seeing is that little bit of tawny mane that's sticking out from the side. Other than that, he's completely camouflaged. Shame, I feel bad for him. He's having quite a restless nap, you know, for being the heat of the day. You'd expect him to be completely out, but I think, you know, just the knowledge that his brother is hungry and around maybe is making him a little bit less relaxed, less willing to completely conquer out and enjoy his afternoon. I think eventually this heat is going to get to them, and they will lie down. We've got some lovely clouds rolling in, which is blocking the sun at the moment, making it a little bit more cool. And again, you can see the immediate sort of change in behavior as a result of that. Very similar to humans. Just a minute ago I was very, very hot and sweaty, and now I'm nice and cool. It's been so wonderful to just sit and watch these males and see that whole scene play out. I can tell you it was not what I expected when we found those 2 sleeping male lions. Really didn't expect any action from them. I thought, okay, we've got some lovely sleeping male lions. We'll sit and appreciate how beautiful they are and then perhaps move off. But they were very obliging and gave us a really, really wonderful scene this morning. So we're very lucky to have witnessed that. It's been a wonderful, magical afternoon. Sorry, morning. It's been a magical morning. I'm really saying it's afternoon because it's so hot. We just wanted to thank you very much for joining us. And we will see you again this afternoon.